So this is.
Yeah, so.
Excellent. I like to hear that. Okay. That's perfect. Thank you. I appreciate it. It's nice being here.
Definitely meet up sometime. I gotta, something.
Probably, if you go to the website, yeah. Clean Energy Center. Google it. Clean Energy Center, you'll get it. I know what's there. You're on the agenda. For the Mountain Home. So we're number 8 on the agenda. So here's the chair. Here's the chair. He's gonna ask for your name.
I'm David Barton, so we have kind of a pretty full agenda here, and I understand from Rick Purcell that most folks are here for agenda item number 8. I'm very loath to take orders to move out of order. I will, however, move it before number 7. The other 6, you know, it may look like a very full agenda. It should move pretty quickly, in my opinion. If I feel like it's not moving quickly enough, so I'm thinking. So I'm gonna have to ask you to have you got some patience. Okay, so that's one. Okay, is there anyone here from Shield Management? No, it's okay. It's okay. All right. I make an assumption too, but hold them off, 6 and 7 off, Rick.
Okay, good. Right, everybody? Good.
But I want to get through 1, 5, because these have been here for a while. Are the others here? Oh, okay, you're right there. All right, okay. All right, so we'll just.
Okay. Oh, the good news is that's been run.
Excellent.
Yeah, in the back. They're homemade. Yeah, well, I'm gonna get a shot of them myself. One with the pen.
Two.
All right. Spilled my water. Okay, good evening. This is the December, 8th meeting of, 9th meeting, sorry, of the Development Governmental Relations Committee. I'm David Bartley, with me is Gordon Alexander and Gladys LeBron Martinez. I believe Councilor Valentin and Councilor McGivern are en route. Also with us is Councilor-elect Mike Sullivan, whom I've asked to join us in here, Councilor-elect at large. So the first item on the agenda is a previous meeting minutes from November 9th. Can I have a motion, please?
Motion to,
Motion to receive and approve?
Second, I'm sorry.
Okay, under discussion, I reviewed the minutes, they look great, so, Ryan did a good job. So, on the motion, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, okay, so moved.
Motion to take up item number 2, so we want to go?
I do.
Second that?
Okay, on the table is a motion for a special permit application for a non-conforming structure at 16065 Hampden Street for Mrs. and Mrs. Bob Everett. This is a public hearing for a non-conforming structure, as no one here knows, but we know very well. They were in here for a non-conforming use, which was an error on the city's part, but I think we've got it straightened out now. So we are going to have a public hearing on this. So I guess I would need a motion to open the public hearing.
Motion to open the public hearing.
Second.
Do you have a motion?
Yeah,
So why don't we go ahead and get that far anyway?
okay, on the motion, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, so moved. Okay, we now have a public hearing open. Did you want to make a comment, Counselor?
Only that, again, I'm perfectly happy to be wrong on this, but I believe this is not a special permit app, it's a variance app. And it's not properly before us, it needs to be before the zoning appeals board.
Okay, I've got, yeah, I hear you on that. I think we had a discussion on it before, but I went back to the building commissioner, and the building commissioner said this is a non-conforming structure.
That's true.
It is true, okay, so, but you're saying that
And in
what?
order to build one, you need a zoning variance. And I don't believe we're the body to issue a zoning variance.
So you're saying the planning board,
Not the planning board, but there's an appeals board or something, a zoning appeals. I know Dave Elbert is on it, I don't know who else the members are. And I believe it's properly before them. I don't think we have
yeah, the community.
standing.
Well, that's, now wouldn't that be interesting? Because before me is a letter from, in the file, is a letter from the building commissioner who said that it would be a non-conforming structure. So it's his opinion that
It's a
it,
non-conforming structure, it's an application
Before us,
for a
right.
non-conforming structure. I just don't think we're the people that he should be asking if he can have one. Here's Councilor McGivern.
Yeah,
Who
so-
possibly know the answer to that.
so Councilor McGivern's with us now. So Councilor McGivern, we are at agenda item number 2. We approved the meeting minutes. And before us are Mr. and Mrs. Bob Everett, if you remember. That was when we had the non-conforming use. And really, the issue was a non-conforming structure. We have the building commissioner saying to have them reapply with a non-conforming structure, which they've done. Now, Councilor Alexander's raised the issue that really this is is this a
It's a zoning
zoning
variance issue.
zoning variance?
And there's another board that handles zoning variances, which is I'm going to say zoning appeals board, but I might not have that name exactly right. Is that the correct name for it? And I believe they're the ones
Be the Board of Appeals.
who would grant a variance, or not, or deny it. I don't believe it's properly before a committee of the council.
Be a question for the law department.
That would be a good question for the law department. And we don't have a law department here.
We don't have a lawyer here.
We don't
probably
have
do if we have a room full of lawyers. We don't have,
Well, we certainly don't
none of them
have,
work for the city at the
we don't
moment.
have zoning.
So, I mean, I guess I would suggest we go through the motions in case it is properly before us, then the applicant hasn't wasted their time. And then if it turns out that they're not, we can guide them to the right place and perhaps pass our recommendation over to the zoning board.
Okay, Councilor McGivern, you want to comment?
I think that's a good idea, Mr. Chairman. I apologize for being late. Non-conforming means something that was in existence prior to the zoning law being enacted. So prior to, Councilor Alexander makes a good point, but if this was in existence prior to the codes, prior to the zoning,
This is not pre-existing non-conforming. There is an existing dilapidated structure. It's a tear down and replace, which is fine. I'm not questioning.
no,
the
I understand, but
pre-existing part.
the issue, I believe, it's in the buffer zone.
It's within the setback,
Right.
correct.
So if it was in the setback buffer zone prior to there was a buffer zone, that's the non-conforming part.
Correct.
Okay, so that is very rare, but that's what I believe is before us, but I think it's a good idea to proceed and then let the lawyers figure it out.
Okay, so
And perhaps the zoning board can deal with it without even, you know, the applicant appearing or anything if we've already gone through the hearing process here.
well,
If it turns out they need to sign off.
right, okay, so we are gonna go through the hearing process, so we've read the public hearing notice, applicant's presentation, Mr. and Mrs. Everett, there's no, we understand we understand what it is, so we'll.
Yeah, we've been through this all
Yeah,
once
we've gone through it
before,
once, so we're
just with the wrong title on the paperwork.
Right, so
We're good with what you're trying to do.
all right, there are no other comments received into the record that we haven't previously read.
Should probably allow public comment, though.
Yeah, I will. There's no one here from the city departments or staff. We're now at the portion where the public can speak either in favor or against it. Would any member of the public want to speak in favor or against this application? Hearing none. Any member of the board want to make additional comment?
No, it's a
Hearing
good
none?
project, it's replacing a garage.
Okay, I'll take a motion.
Motion to close the public hearing?
On the motion, all in favor?
Aye.
So moved.
Motion to recommend approval of the special permit pending confirmation that we in fact need to issue a special permit.
Second.
Now, just give me that one more time, Gordon, because I want to write that one down.
Motion to approve?
Yep.
Or to recommend approval to the council?
Mm-hmm.
Pending confirmation that the council is actually the granting authority for the variance, which I doubt. You can leave that off. Hey, Jesse.
Okay, so the public hearing is closed. The motion before us is to approve the application pending confirmation that the issue is properly before the city council. Is that fair to say?
Sure.
All right.
I think, Mr. Chairman, our findings would be the same as when we closed the original public hearing, is that as you stated earlier, the structure pre-existed the zoning dimensional setback ordinance itself. It is not detrimental to the neighborhood or to the adjacent properties. It's actually a positive that they be allowed to rebuild on the same site.
Okay, so just under discussion, so we can approve this tonight, and then I should send a communication to the law department saying that we approved it, we approved this particular motion, and have the law department give us an opinion, or give the Everett's
Just
an
that
opinion?
there's a question as to whether it's us or the zoning board of appeals that should be hearing this.
Okay, so,
And because I don't think you need a special permit for a variance, I think it's the wrong legal form, but, you know, the essence of the issue is the same.
okay. Counselor Valentin has joined us. Counselor, we approved the meeting minutes, and we're now on agenda item number 2 with Mr. and Mrs. Everett from 1065 Hamden. Okay, on the motion, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so moved. Mr. and Mrs. Everett, as tortured as this continues to be, at least we have some progress, and then we'll find out some additional details tomorrow, and I'll forward them to you ASAP. City Council next meets on Tuesday, so I'm hopeful that that'll be the tail of the tape, but we'll see. Okay, well, thank you, folks, appreciate your patience. Okay,
Do you want to take up 3 and 4 as a package?
I would like to take up 3 alone, and then 4 and 5 as a package. I think that's where,
3 and 4 are the same buyer, that's the only reason I was thinking.
but 4 and 5 pertain to the same property.
Oh, they do?
They do.
Different interested parties.
416, 418, 416.
Okay, so we just let's see, 62, 61, 214, 61, yes, 4 and 5 pertain to the same property, Counselor.
Is your agenda different than mine? 184 Beach?
Yeah, 61, 214, 61, 214.
But the address is different? Is it on the corner?
Yeah,
This one says Appleton Street, this one says Beach Street. Are they?
I'm going by the parcel.
It's just on a corner, and so it's got 2 addresses? Is that what's happened?
Well, no, I can shed some light. The subject property is next to one, also next to my property.
Oh, Oh, it's adjoining 184 Beach, gotcha, okay. never
Okay, so
mind,
if we
my
could just
bad.
take up number 3,
So,
that would be
motion to
great.
take up item number 3.
Second.
Okay, before us is agenda item number 3. The city council, in accordance with 30B, and the procurement orders to consider offering Steve Bosco to purchase a parcel of land located 99 Beach for $7,500. Said parcel is described in Assessor's Map 6256, consisting of approximately 4,400 square feet, and described in the Hampden County Registry of Deeds. The zone DR has assessed value of $26,900. There's a letter from Mayor Morse, and additional information has been submitted to the council, a letter from Mr. Bosco proposing to use this lot for green space or a community garden. So, here's a small parcel. Might not be a bad idea to hear from Mr. Bosco on this, but I'll
Motion to suspend and allow the prospective buyer to approach.
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Aye. So move, Mr. Bosco. You want to step to the mic and just tell us a little bit about this parcel?
Excuse me.
Good evening. So 99 Beach Street is next to my property at 101 Beach Street, which is a 10-unit, 5-story apartment building. We do have another lot that's on the other side of the building, which we're planning to use for parking. So this one would just be green space. And we would possibly use it for community gardening if there was sufficient interest in that. And so really that's about all I can say about that that parcel. We just want to acquire it, or I just want to acquire it so that I can maintain it in better condition and just have better control over it and not have people parking on it or littering it or having the weeds get out of control there.
Thank you. Under suspension, any questions from Mr. Bosco from the committee? Councilor McGivern?
Steve, you're willing to pay the extra property tax just to be able to be in control of that lot?
Yes, Counselor.
And you have no intentions of developing it, or would that be an open possibility down the road?
Well, I'm not intending to put an explicit conservation easement on the property or anything of that nature, so I guess as such it would be open to being developed in the future, although I don't think you could build too much on it. It's a pretty narrow lot. With present-day setbacks, I think you wouldn't be able to build too much on it. And there's another apartment building right on the other side of the lot. So the buildings, both buildings come right up to the lot line on either side.
Unless we had non-conforming structures before us, right?
That's always possible.
We have non-conforming litter in front of us.
I wouldn't expect a conservation, application. What I really think is that someday, if it is buildable, that, whether it's the, similar to those duplexes across the street or something that's in addition to your building, that would certainly be desirable. Thank you.
Thank you.
Steve, thanks for coming down. Thanks for being interested in a weed-strewn, litter-strewn lot. So do you know what the dimensions of the lot are? Roughly,
Well,
ballpark?
I don't know off the top of my head. I could take a rough guess that it's maybe,
Is it 40 by 100? Is that a
that sounds about
reasonable
right.
approximation?
Yeah.
So-
So maybe a little bigger than that. Maybe 5,000 square feet or something like
Okay.
that.
And there really isn't, there's nothing you can do with this. Thank you. I appreciate your taking an interest in it.
Thank you.
Anything, Josie? Who's vice chair of this? Who's vice? Who's vice chair? Joe, are you vice? Oh, no, Dave's back. Never mind.
Okay.
So we're done with discussion.
Okay, sorry about that. Apologize.
We're not in a public hearing or anything, so we just need a motion.
No? Okay, no other questions for Mr. Bosco on this property? I guess we'll take a motion.
Motion to recommend approval of the purchase, the sale?
Okay, motion before us to recommend that the city convey the aforementioned property to, Steve, this is going to whom? Who would be the
Buyer of record.
purchaser?
I generally hold property in my own name. So no corporate form of ownership. It would be
Okay.
my own name.
All right, So this would be the city of Holyoke to Mr. Steve Bosco for his offer of $7,500 for this property located in 99 Beach. Okay, on the motion, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, 5-0. Thank you, Mr. Bosco. Now, if you want to take 4 and 5 as a package, that might not be a bad idea.
Motion to do so. Take up 4 and 5 as a package.
I don't know that I want to do that. because
I don't think they're adjacent.
They're different sellers. I mean, they're different.
They're different buyers, but
people
they're the same
interested.
property.
Yeah.
For purposes of discussion, but not for
Sure,
voting?
second. For purposes of discussion, I guess.
Okay, we're just hold on a second, let me mark the, okay. Before us is an order, that the city council in quarter 30B and the procurement ordinance consider an offer from Stephen Bosco to purchase a parcel of land at 41618 Appleton for $4,600. Property described in the assessor's map at assessor's records at 61,214, consisting of approximately 2,526 square feet. The property is zoned DR and is assessed value of $4,600. Also before us is a communication from Anthony Whitman, making an unsolicited offer. This is not from the mayor's office, so we could not grant this today. Should Mr. Whitman's offer be accepted, we cannot grant this request, but the request pertains to the exact same parcel. I think we've all seen have we all seen the letter?
I have not. Could you just summarize it into the record?
I'd be happy to summarize it.
Very briefly.
This is dated November 5th. Dear Mayor Morse, as you've been aware, we are acting as receiver and rehabilitating the property located at 18486 Beach. The work is near completion, and we expect to auction the property shortly. One of the duties we undertake as receiver is studying and determining the underlying root of causes of decay of property. It's important for us to understand that what went wrong. In case of 18486 Beach, undercapitalization, mismanagement were major factors. The property is uniquely situated as the last house on the street before the intersection with Appleton. Curbside parking is reduced from directly in front of the house to the intersection. There is no nearby parking on Appleton, and much of the parking further down Beach is absorbed by the YMCA. This lack of parking significantly impacts marketability of the 4 units and creates an environment where only more transient tenants without cars might consider living in the property. Although periodically maintained, the abutting city-owned parcel, 61-2-14, is often littered or in a state of overgrowth. This creates an attractive nuisance. We believe that the city is in a unique position to help ensure the future operational success of 184-186 Beach by selling 61-214 for additional yard and parking. We recognize that additional improvements might be required to use the lot as intended, but the result would be a significant additional value to 184-86 Beach. We would like to present an unsolicited offer to the city of $5,750. Please let me know what the process might be to submit an offer. Hopefully we can purchase it. Sincerely yours, Anthony Whitman. Any questions about that? So but if I could just sum it up. If I could sum it up, we have, looks like we have 2 offers for the same property. One is properly before us as approved by the mayor of Holyoke for $4,600. This order was filed on August 4th, and the same parcel is being solicited by Mr. Whitman through a letter dated November 5th for a slightly higher value. So, before us, so questions for
Yeah, are we still
Mr. We're under suspension, yeah.
For suspension, would like to hear from Steve.
Mr. Bosco?
Certainly. So one thing I would add is that I started the process of trying to acquire this lot and the other lot, the 99 Beach Street in March of this year. So it's been kind of a long process. This lot, 416 Appleton Street, abuts my property at 179 Pine Street, and I was motivated to acquire it for a couple of reasons. The first is that it is often overgrown and full of trash, and it was fairly difficult to get the city to come out and clean it up, although upon contacting Bill Fuquay from the DPW, they have sent out some crews and periodically cleaned up that lot. I was interested in acquiring it also, not just to maintain it and keep the neighborhood looking better, and it's very close to my office and other property that I own, so I'm very interested in keeping that neighborhood looking good. But it also abuts my property, and I don't really have any parking on site. My tenants do, as a two-family house at 179 Pine Street, my tenants do sometimes drive cars into the yard, but I've told them not to do that. I don't think that's an ideal situation. So it would be something that we would be able to use as parking as well, and additionally some green space. We wouldn't turn the entire lot into parking. And the property next door, 184, 186 Beach Street, doesn't currently have any on-site parking, but it did have a garage there before, and the backyard abuts the alleyway directly, and probably would be large enough, I think, for 4, 5, maybe 6 parking spaces angled in off the alleyway.
Okay, thank you. Questions for Mr. Bosco?
I have questions. These numbers aren't matching up. You know, Pine Street and Beach Street don't abut each other. We're not talking about one parcel here. Or we have the wrong numbers in front of us.
We end up on Pine. I thought we were
Well,
on
it's
Appleton.
it's around the end of Beach, Appleton, and Pine. So,
Well, Beach and Appleton are an intersection. Pine is a block away.
right, so my property abuts this one across the alleyway. So I own up to the center line of the alleyway, and the lot owns up to the center line of the alleyway. So the alleyway is the one that runs perpendicular from the front door of the YMCA up to Essex Street, in between Pine and Beach. Do you know the little pocket park that's on the corner across Appleton Street from the YMCA?
Yes.
This lot is right behind that pocket park.
On Appleton Street.
On
Yes,
On
Councilmember
Appleton or
Gibbon.
on Beach?
Well, if the park is on the corner of Beach and Appleton. You know, if you're walking down Beach Street with traffic, and you turn the corner to the right, still walking along that pocket park, the next thing you get to is the lot.
It's the old LaPointe's Market. Used to be a 3-4-story building that burnt down many years ago.
I believe that's correct. That's before my time.
It's actually non-buildable because of the size, and it's beyond the safe years of since the building was demolished. But Steve, I'm not making a connection here. I don't know why.
Well, okay, so 179 Pine Street is the entire corner of Pine and Appleton. So it goes from Pine all the way up to the alleyway. Would it be helpful for me to make a quick drawing?
No, it'd be helpful if the city had provided us with the assessor's maps and, you know, the things that we
What's
need
the
to do
one?
our job the correct
This
way,
is
but
Appleton.
Don't have them.
that's not your
This
fault.
is Beach, this is Pine.
Councilmember Gibbon, maybe it can help you. You know that big,
Here's the mic.
just to give you some perspective of the area. If you're on Pine and on the right is 185, it's that building that's been closed for many, many years. That's
Has an elevator in it.
quite an eyesore. Yeah, that one.
One's a
So,
beautiful building.
so-
One of my best friends grew up in it.
so that's 185. So this lot that Mr. Bosco is talking about is before that.
Where's 184, 186 Beach Street that we're also talking about? That's
180
on the other
It's
side of the
next to
beach.
the pocket park
Correct.
on,
So if you're
Beach
driving down Beach, it's the two-family on the right before the pocket park. It was abandoned for a long time, and now it's looking much better because it's being remodeled.
And Steve,
Does that help you figure out?
Okay,
So what Stephen is talking about is the alley, which is between Pine and Beach, is the meeting point of all of these properties.
thank you, like a good Ward 4 counselor.
That's right.
Thank you.
Behind the tree on the left with the fire hydrant and the...
See, if you told me next to the yellow Volkswagen, I would have got it.
Steve, while you're standing there, so I'm sorry, how many units are in your building?
2 at 179 Pine Street.
Two
There's
units, so you
2
expect
units.
between presumably 2 and 4 cars there typically.
Yeah, I think 4 parking spaces would probably make sense.
Okay. And there is no other parking on your site? I'm just trying to understand the need.
No, there is not. There's not currently anything which is really that should be used as parking. There's space that could potentially be paved and used as parking, I suppose. I don't know the legality of being parked right next to the house. There's sometimes codes that impact that.
I'm not sure about next to it. I know you can't park in front, or at least you can't pave in front.
Well, I think we know the parking answer. Need a special permit, because it's not adjacent.
I don't know alleyways, because the alleyways are privately owned. There is no city right-of-way. I mean, there's a city right-of-way, but there's no city actual ownership in the middle,
We need a law department on that one,
like
too.
a street would cause. Okay, so 2 units. There is on-street parking on Pine, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And can we ask Mr. Whitman to wander up to the mic?
Well, sure, if you, yeah, you
Tony, do you
suspend.
want to come?
You gotta you gotta suspend.
Further suspension of the rules to allow you to come?
Okay, motion to allow Ms. Whitman to address on the motion, all in favor? Aye, okay. Ms. Whitman?
Thank you all, and I would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge, Steve's contribution to the area there and the, the management he's done with the other properties. And
Ms. Whitman, you just got to talk into the mic. Make sure it's on, first of all, just tap it.
hello.
Okay, you just got to talk into the mic, sorry.
Okay,
Thank you.
there you go.
Tony, it's not for us. We're broadcasting to television, and spoken into the room doesn't go to TV at all.
Okay, very good. I understand. So I was saying I'd be remiss if I didn't recognize the contributions and speak publicly towards the investment that Steve has in the area, and the investment that he has not just in the buildings but in the people there. And if this wasn't something that I felt strongly about, I certainly wouldn't second guess anything that he wanted to do. And any city lot in his hands in that area is going to be improved upon, and I'm certain of that. So thank you, Steve, for all of that. The reason that we're here today, speaking in opposition to this is in part because we don't think it's the highest and best use of this property. We think the highest and best use for the city and for the public is actually attaching it to the real abutting property at 184, 186 Beach Street. And that's a 4-unit property, primarily 1 and 2 bedroom apartments, but you can imagine a parking load of 4 to 8 vehicles at any given time. The way the curb is designed on Beach Street is that the curbside parking is reduced directly in front of this property. So maybe there's 1 on-street parking spot in front of this property, and we all know that the parking on this entire corridor is incredibly compact. And we're opening this building right now. People are moving in and looking into adding another, up to another 8 vehicles onto the Beach Street parking. If you imagine what a line of 8 vehicles looks like and where that's going to fit over there, I think you recognize the need for additional off-street parking. I also, I know that there, this offer that Steve has and our offers unsolicited on the part of both of us. And I think, as a municipality, the city really needs to consider, what the highest and best use is to the public when disposing of these, and that there may be processes which better determine that, like requests for bids or public auctions and things like that. Other municipalities have those sorts of safeguards in order to make sure that there's transparency and clarity in all the transactions. But ultimately, I think our interest is very similar. We need a lot of parking. The extra cars on Beach Street aren't just going to impact our tenants, but they're going to impact all the residents along that corridor, including other residents of Mr. Bosco.
Sure, Councilor Valentin?
Thank you. Thank you for coming down, both of you. And my question is, since when has Whitman Properties been working on 184, 186 Beach?
We started the project about a year ago, and we undertook the whole renovation of that as a receivership. So right now, we're coming to the tail end of that. We're renting it, we're slating it for auction.
Okay. So my follow-up question to that, and I'm not trying to be, fresh or anything, it's literally a legitimate question. Mr. Boschko stated his interest in this property officially in terms of, when all of this paperwork came through and the offer he made to the mayor and how we all received this, about 3 months or more before your interest. Can I ask what kind of triggered this for you now? And I mean, if you've been working on the property for a year and you knew that there was going to be an issue with space for parking, is there something that I'm missing here in terms of kind of what triggered this second offer from your company?
Well, it may in part be in what the general public is missing in some of these transactions, which is knowledge that that there's a sale of the lot. Certainly, we would have stated an interest earlier if there was an RFP process or something like that, which openly solicited bids from the public. In this case, we basically got down to the end of the project and then started talking to the city about the need, and then the information, as the other transaction before you came about. And I can't say that I can question whether or not Mr. Bosco will be a responsible owner of that lot, because I know he would be, but I think that there may be a higher and better use of this property that the city needs to consider.
So, how did you find out about the situation or the offer? Or how did you find out that you could, that this property was there and somebody else had made an offer and you came in and made an offer that was higher than that? I'm just trying to put all the
I
pieces
just started
together.
asking around people I knew in the city, and they directed me to the idea that this is public information and things like that.
Okay. So what Stephen is proposing is about 4 parking spots and some green space, correct? And what you are proposing is that you need it for 8 spots.
Right, we're suggesting that as many as eight vehicles could be associated with this building.
And only parking. That's what the lot would be.
There's a bank that comes down, so there'd be a little bit of green space where that bank is, but we're suggesting the flat portion of this is going to be primarily for
Just trying to
parking.
get a sense of what the
Yeah.
needs are. Okay, thank you.
Thanks. So, I'm not too worried about the sequencing. I'm speaking to both of you right now. I am interested in sort of what is the best use for the property, given that there are 2 very legitimate uses for the property, even though they sound kind of similar. And we just went through, honestly, a battle royale over parking in this neighborhood and crafting an entire process to allow people to apply for additional parking because the Y needed parking and there was nothing left on the street, and. It looks to me, without doing the math, but it looks like there are 8 parking spaces. You could carve 8 parking spaces out of this. Is that would both of you, just from eyeballing it, say that's about right?
That's about all you would get on that lot.
Okay. And again, just so I've got the geography right, this is physically adjacent to the property that Whitman is rehabbing and
That's correct.
abuts it, but across the public alleyway, which is privately owned, but is a public alleyway, from your property, right?
Yeah, it's
Okay,
kind of
so I think I found it on the map. I just wanted to make sure I really had the right property.
side by side with his, back to back.
Gotcha.
And just one more comment that's perhaps relevant. I'm the owner.
Can you just speak into the mic? Thanks,
I'm the
sorry.
owner of 179 Pine Street, and Mr. Whitman is the receiver of 184 Beach Street. And he has done a fantastic job on renovating that property and improving the neighborhood. But it's an important distinction that he's the receiver of that property, which means that at some point it has to be sold, and he might be the buyer and somebody else might be the buyer.
Understood. And Tony, is your intent that if you do acquire this property and then move forward with some kind of a sale, that
Yeah,
the
that-
two properties would be sold together, or that you would merge the two properties into one parcel so that there would be a subdivision process if anybody tried to peel it off later or something.
That's correct. I mean, we, almost expect to end up bidding at this property at the auction, and, there's a chance that we will be the owner, in which case we would want to combine the two lots in an abutter sale. In the event that we weren't the owner, I still feel very strongly that, that a new owner in control of the property should have an opportunity to petition the city to do the same thing, because it is so important for that parcel and for the ongoing successful operation of that building, that something be done there.
Explain, I have just a couple of questions about the receiver process, and I should know the answers, so bear with me here, because I don't. So I'm assuming that the auction at the end of the rehab process is part of the standard form of how a receivership works?
Correct.
It's a required final event?
Correct. In order to clear the title on a lot of these properties, and in order for the receiver to enforce their lien for the work done, they have to have a foreclosure sale of the property, much like a bank foreclosure when they take it over.
Okay.
So in this case, we're the ones conducting the auction. It's a public auction. People can come and bid. And
And so out of the proceeds, your bills as the receiver and the rehabber of the property, those get taken care of, and then
that's correct.
remaining profits go to the city as the owner of the property once it's sold?
Right. So
Assuming there's
we're-
any remaining profits, it may
We're
well not be.
auctioning the property. If another buyer comes in and bids above our lien amount, for example, then we would allow the property to be sold, and the proceeds of that sale go back to the owner or to other lien holders.
Okay.
If another bidder does not come and outbid us, then we would basically buy the property for our lien amount and become the owner.
Okay. I had one other question, bear with me, I have a second, just want to formulate the thought. In the process, the city presumably walked away from a tax bill or whatever else? Is that correct, or is that incorrect?
Taxes are being paid on it.
Taxes are being paid.
That's correct.
Were they current at the time you became the receiver? Or as a receiver, do you have to bring them current?
There's been a bank involved paying the quarterly taxes, I believe. If there are any outstanding, then we have to bring them current at the end at the closing of the sale, we bring any taxes current.
And that would be water bills and whatever else too?
Exactly.
Any city assessments against the
Any
property?
municipal liens are superior to our lien, so they get
Gotcha.
cleared up at
Okay.
the closing.
That's all of my questions. Thank you.
Councilor McGivern?
Both of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Tony, just a couple questions, but the bank is the true owner at the moment of the property, but you were appointed receiver. Is that a-
That's confusing, but not quite correct. Juan Flores is the owner. The bank has not foreclosed on the property. What leads a lot of these properties into
I
receivership?
may ask, who appointed you receiver?
The Western District Housing Court.
Okay. And do you know, because you had a question about a RFP process, the mayor exercised his rights under 30B to enter into negotiations with Mr. Bosco because of the price of the property and the value of the property being, the price being set at under $25,000. With the permission of council, the mayor can do that. It circumvents the auction. I thought when you were saying auction, I thought you were talking about the treasurer auctioning off the property, but you're talking about who is going to auction off the property?
The property at 184, 186 Beach
Yeah.
Street. We're auctioning the property off.
Okay, but the owner is still in place. Mr. Flores?
Mr. Flores is still in place. He's an owner who's walked away and abandoned the property. The bank has refused to take control of the property or is unable to foreclose on it, probably due to title issues and things of that nature. That's what leads these properties into receivership. So then the court appoints somebody to be in control of them and rehab them.
What they usually do is just abandon them, which is not the answer either, but the owner of the property, I'm not clear legally who the owner of the property is, I got your answers, should have been notified by the city that the mayor was negotiating for this property. We're not sure if that happened or not because Mr. Flores is not here, you're the receiver, and I don't think anyone here is here to speak for the bank. But that's just to clarify your question about negotiating and being able to. You did, the way I see this, sent the communication to the mayor with your unsolicited offer. Have you had any discussion with the mayor about this?
I haven't had any discussion with him, in part, I think, because he wanted to rule on the matter at hand first. And I think any ruling today should also not, it would be without any prejudice to reopen the issue later.
True, but in front of us is the communication from you, which all we can do is receive. We cannot act on it. We cannot negotiate on your behalf. We cannot get in the middle of it, other than use it for our discussion with Mr. Bosco, which I think is what we're attempting to do. The parking lot you described, whether it's 8 or whether it's whatever fits on the parking lot for the tenants of the building that you're rehabbing, what's the type of parking lot are you talking about? Is the plan to file for the permits, to pave over asphalt?
That's correct. If that's what the city would require for parking, whether it's a paved service or another, stone or gravel surface, we would.
The egress to that parking lot, if you're going to fit eight automobiles on the parking lot, would have to be the alleyway, which you would only own half of.
Well, that's not correct, because the way the parcels abut, there's probably 30 feet of abutting land, so we'd build some stairs coming right down.
I'm talking about driving the vehicles there.
Right, to get into the,
Yeah. Done. How many days has he got left?
No, just clarify the
And-
question, Joe. Just clarify the question.
I have a lot of questions about whether you can even put a parking lot there using the alleyway. Yeah, alleyways are traditionally used for safety, for DPW, and for people who have garages that pre-exist zoning that open up to the alleyway. And I'm sure there's a way, but there's no guarantee before you put a lot of money into a parking lot. I think that alleyway gives you the legal access to the parking lot. I'm just throwing that out. Mr. Bosco's case, the property would be owned on both sides of the alleyway, would be responsible for that part of the alleyway. To both, actually to Mr. Bosco, Steve, is your plan to put a parking lot and pave it and do all the things that the city would require?
Yes, it is. Part of our plan would be to put in a rain garden or a rain sink of some sort right next to the sidewalk so that this wouldn't be shedding any runoff into Appleton Street. But yeah, other than that, we would go through the,
You're aware of the stormwater regulations these days are very tight in terms of any time you lay down an asphalt concrete surface.
I'm aware that they're out there, and I'm certainly aware of why it's important.
Yes.
Every time we have
But
a
very
heavy
expensive is the point. Is there a reverter in the offer that the mayor's put before us if the parking lot is not put in?
I'll read what the mayor wrote. Proposal is submitted by Steve Bosco of Aero Properties. These are vacant lots. These small lots are complement Mr. Bosco's abutting properties. Additionally, Mr. Bosco has owned and made investments. I asked the city council to consider. I don't see anything about a reverter in this letter.
The best use for the property was something that was proposed by a very young city councilor known as an alderman back in the 1980s, who with a group of neighbors convinced the city that that property should abut the existing park, which is known as People's Park, I believe.
I think it is.
And to expand People's Park. A grant was attained by the city that would have covered and taken care of the vacant lot. At the time, the owners decided to cut down unfortunately, it was a beech tree, a very good condition, old beech tree, and convinced the then property owners of the Beach Street property that this was all part of selling of that lot, and that the city would pay good dollars for the lot. The lot is not buildable outside of the fact that the existing, similar to 99 Beach Street, the existing structure would be non-conforming, but long gone beyond those 2 years of being able to rebuild, I think, in the same footprint. it would have made a lot more sense just to expand the park. Unfortunately, that didn't happen because the offer for the land didn't take place. They held out for too much money. The city went forward with the park as it is. And that's called the stagecoach highway robbery, method of obtaining property. If we're, the mayor has made a fair bargaining here. I don't have a problem with that. Council Alexander said I don't have a problem with the reasons for parking for either gentleman. But if we don't have a reverter clause, to me, it doesn't make sense to be doing this type of deal. We need something that says on any property that the city sells, this will take place in 1 year, 2 year, 3 years, or revert back to the city for other purposes. And I think that's missing on this one. I forgot to ask on 99 Beach Street, but that's okay. I think we need reverter language on this.
Counselor Alexander?
Thanks. Can I get you guys to switch again? I have a question for Tony. Or you
There's
have
just,
something you wanna add? Go ahead.
one more thing I wanted to mention, and maybe Mr. Whitman can contradict me if I'm wrong about this, but I believe there exists the possibility of a scenario where somebody buys 184 Beach Street at Mr. Whitman's receiver's auction, but doesn't buy the lot next door. So if he were to be the owner of the lot next door, it's possible that there could be a situation where he just owned that lot and somebody else owned 184 Beach.
Counselor Alexander?
Tony, back to the receiver process for a half sec. Once the court appoints a receiver, does the original owner, I think his name was Mr. Suarez? Flores, sorry. Does he have any financial interest in the property at that point, or his interest is dissolved, or whatever you call it?
Before,
If it's sold for $1 million at auction,
right, so his interest will get paid after all the banks and things got paid. So there'd have to be enough equity in the property to pay us, to pay the first and second mortgage holders.
okay, so
Then-
it's basically we take away the toy, we pay all the bills, and anything that's left over goes back to the owner we took it away from. That's essentially how it works?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Counselor, sorry.
Uh,
Go ahead.
I have a couple of comments, but they can wait.
Yeah, you can, go ahead.
No,
You
no,
might-
I'm good.
Counselor LeBron Martinez?
Yeah, so I have a question. So is there any tenants inside right now in that building that you?
They're moving in this weekend, so we have 3 of the units rented already.
Okay, thank you.
Counselor Valentin?
Thank you. I'm not I'm not a stormwater expert, but I think this parcel is 2,526 square feet, and I think the requirements that Councilor McGivern was talking about go into effect after 5,000 square feet. So I'm pretty sure I remember having this conversation with someone in one of the city departments, so I just wanted to say that. But the other thing is, also to Councilor McGivern's point about the reverter, if I'm correct, that type of language goes into the purchase and sale agreement. So I would actually, since there seem to be questions about these issues, I would like to make a motion to suspend the rules and allow Marcos to come in and just briefly address us, if that's okay with him, because I'm sure he's familiar with these things all the time.
Second motion.
Thank you.
Okay, we have a motion for us to allow the department chair to come in and address us on this issue. On the motion, all in favor? Aye. Marcos? Marcos, you want us to talk in the mic? You want to come in either way? So, come on in. Yeah, you're more comfortable. So, Councilor Valentin, you want to just repeat the question for Marcos Muro, please?
So the first is about Councilor McGivern's point regarding the reverter, and clarifying if it's accurate about that would come up at the purchase and sale level. And then if you are familiar with the whole stormwater piece and the assumption that the information that I was sharing.
So on the reverter piece, that's accurate. A purchase and sale agreement has not been drafted. The procedure that we've always followed is that the proposals come before the city council first, and those are considered for approval. After approval, purchase and sale is drawn up, and a standard provision of all land sales is a reverter clause. So that's why you don't have it in your packet today. As far as stormwater, we don't handle it. It's the city engineer's office. My understanding is that it is 5,000 square feet. I don't know if there are exemptions to that or whatnot. Because of the grade change, someone may have to consider that. I don't know the intricacies of it, but I believe it is 5,000 square feet.
All set? Councilor McGivern?
Marcus, you say the reverter has always been, I understand it's on the purchase and sale, but it's always been handled after the city council takes a vote on the purchase price? I don't think Mayor Morse has used 30B maybe more than 4 or 5 other times during his tenure. So I respectfully disagree. I think when 30B comes before us, the property is ready for sale. We're voting on, and I'm guessing that we already made this property surplus, because I don't recall the vote on that, but I'm hoping that vote's already taken place, because if we didn't make it surplus, this is all null and void.
Correct.
But 2 is, and surplus has to be requested by the mayor, by the city. 2 is, I think it just makes sense that if we're gonna vote on a sale price, that we know that there's reverter language to make us assured that what this is being, because the purpose of 30B is the mayor can circumvent an auction, can circumvent an RFP, and can do something that is the intent of the purchaser, and it fits into the property for the best use for the neighborhood, for the city, and so on. So a reverter language is even more important when you go the 30B route, and I think the city council needs to know that there's reverter language, before we condoned or approved a sale, a purchase price itself. Is that?
Yes, every land transaction I've been a part of as part of this administration, whether through the city, the HEDIC, or the HRA, the reverter is standard, because land control is one of the few significant tools that we have at the local level. Without that, you give up all control at the beginning, and it's hard to hold a developer accountable. So yeah, definitely. I'd be stupid to sign anything without a reverter, unless there's a very specific reason why it's not needed. I don't see that in this case.
And I will not vote in favor or against necessarily this proposal until we know the reverter language.
Well, just hold on a sec. Councilor Alexanders wants to make a comment, then we'll take a motion.
Thanks. Couple of things. One is, I think we could probably, if we got to that point, and I'm not there either, I'm at some kind of table-y kind of thing, but if we get to the point, we can always say we're recommending approval conditional on a reverter being in the purchase and sale. So I think we can get at it that way. I guess listening to the 2 proposals, listening to the need for the parking for the 2 buildings, my inclination is that attaching it to, and forgive me, I'm not going to remember the addresses, but attaching it to the Whitman side of the property line seems to make more sense to me. It's a property that the city has already invested time and effort, if not actual cash, into going through the receiver process to get this property back into some kind of useful condition for the city. A property with no parking right there, with 8 apartments in it, I think is challenging, both to the value of the property and the success of the property, but also to the city in general in an area where parking is a problem. We've had, I don't know how many hearings on what a problem parking is in that neighborhood. So creating 8 more units, while that's great, with 0 parking, that seems bad. So my inclination is to go down that road. Unfortunately, we don't have a mayoral communication regarding the Whitman proposal in front of us. So my suggestion, I guess, to the committee would be that we table the Steve's proposal temporarily, because to me, the cost of the 2, one's $4,500, the other's $5,500, is essentially the same money. It's not about the money, it's about highest and best use for this particular little scrap of land. That we table Steve's proposal and recommend that the council send a communication to the mayor urging him to consider the Whitman proposal, so that the 2 can be considered side by side. The mayor can make his final decision on which one he wants to put before us, but that we at least bring forth to him that the Whitman proposal seems, on the face of it, from the information we have in front of us, and I'm only speaking for myself, to be the better use of the two. So that would be my suggestion. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm trying to find the mayor's communication to me that when, I don't have it in front of me, but he did send me an email when the solicitation came in from Mr. Whitman, and the email essentially said that he has no intention on submitting, at this point, Mr. Whitman's offer in a communication to us that complies with 30B. So at this stage,
I would ask him why not. I'm sorry. That's,
right.
no
It's
intention isn't a really good answer.
and right. It's. But I'd rather just have his words in front of me. But I don't. It's going to take me a minute to find the email. But nevertheless, I'll just give you my 2 cents on this. I agree with Councilor Alexander for 2 reasons. One, I think that we're trying to generate a receivership program. Mr. Whitman stepped up and purchased a property that has been vacant for Mr. Whitman, how long has the property been vacant?
I'm guessing probably since 2007 when the real estate market.
Okay, a property that's been vacant, and now Mr. Whitman has rehabilitated it. His company has 3 tenants moving in. I think this is a small gesture on the part of the mayor to, I thought that was a great comment. Thanks for the applause. So I think this would be a small gesture on the part of the city to recognize the value of receivership, plus the fact that it's a higher offer. And just so the public knows, we're talking about a parcel that's about, geez, Joe, it's not much bigger than this room. Let me tell you, it's 50 by 50. So that's what we've been talking about for the last half hour. So that's just my opinion on it for this point, but I can't make a motion, so I'll take any motion at this point. But if I could make a motion, I would make a motion to reject the offer and to say that the communication's been complied with. But that's me. But I'll take any motion.
So, just a point of order, there had been a motion to take these 2 as a package for discussion.
Yes.
And I voted in favor of it as discussion, but not, I said for discussion purposes, sure, but for voting purposes, they're very different because obviously, as we've said already, the only thing we have in front of us to vote on right now is Mr. Bosco's offer. So it seems to me that the will of the committee is not to be towards approving Mr. Bosco's proposal at this point. So I would prefer to see us do a motion to table this so that those who are concerned about all the other pieces have the opportunity to obtain additional information. And I would also like to follow up with the law department on what is the logistics around this, because we had this proposal from Stephen 4 months ago, and then a month ago this kind of counteroffer came up. We don't have it in the proper form and everything else, and so
let me just make a there isn't under 30B a accepted offer from room 1 to be before us, but it is a communication. So just your language, counselor, whether it's proper form, just specify what you mean by that, because
what I mean is it's nothing we can vote on. We can only vote on Stephen's
no, we
offer.
can vote on it. We can't accept an offer, but we can vote to say received. That's all we can
can't
vote on.
leave this room saying to Mr. Whitman, yes, we're going with your offer.
Correct, and I made that very clear in my opening statements.
Yeah, so that's what I'm referring to in summary. So because the will of the body seems to, at this point, not be in any way, shape, or form to support Mr. Bosco's proposal, I would like to make the motion that we table this so that those who have concerns can have the time and the opportunity to obtain the information that they need, and so that all the decisions that we make about this are best informed. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Councilman McGivern?
if I could, before a second, I would ask for purposes of the next meeting that either Marcus or or our administrative assistant will communicate with the mayor's office to see if there could be reverter language put before us in terms of the proposed parking lot itself. And to share with them the thoughts of Council Alexander's and the better parking lot, use of parking lot might be for the Beach Street property. I think it's important that we have, a clear understanding of, not just the dollar, that price that as we know, only the mayor can negotiate, but that it's clear what the intentions are in terms of a reverter language. I also want to make sure if someone could just communicate with the law department or the city clerk that we have declared this property surplus already.
So, Marcos, can you tackle items, I think Joe listed 4, but the one is reverter language, and second is to verify that the property has been voted surplus?
It is surplus. I have it
Okay,
here.
so that's confirmed, Joe.
Thank you.
All right, and on the reverter language, Marcos,
Yes.
you'll have the mayor send communication? Okay, and Joe, I think you said the other issue was what the better use, so what's,
Well, Council, in fairness, just so we can get going, because we have other
Sure.
items on the agenda. Councilor Alexander's point that he thinks the Beach Street property might be, if it's gonna be a parking lot, might be better use in terms of the needs of the neighborhood or needs of the property owners.
okay, all right, so,
I'm just saying, we're looking for feedback from the mayor.
right, yeah, the mayor did give me feedback, and I can't find it, but I'll forward it to you at,
Well, we're giving feedback to his feedback, I think.
okay, I'll forward that to you. Okay, so, I don't have a second.
Second.
Okay, that's not debatable. On the motion to table, all in favor?
Aye.
I'm voting no, so 4-1 table. Okay. All right, that is tabled. So,
Motion to then,
so gentlemen, so we're just gonna have to, if I may, just for the committee, we're gonna have to get a little feedback from the mayor, disseminate it to this committee, and I will do that. Mr. Morero will determine the reverter language, and then I'll do my best to get back in touch with both of you. I don't see this committee meeting again until January, so we'll figure it out in January if that works for you, okay?
Thank you. Thank you, Councilor Bartley.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, that works for us. The one thing I was going to add is that the legal piece of the ownership of this should be resolved on our end in probably 6 to 8 weeks. So then, if there's any question about whether we own 184, 186 Beach Street, or whether even Mr. Bosco has bought it at the auction, we'll know that answer, and that. I think
So the auction you're saying is in 6 to 8 weeks?
Yeah.
Okay, all right, thank you, Mr. Whitman. Thank you, Mr. Bosco. Appreciate your time, both of you.
Thank you both.
Roscoe buys 184, 186, he can have all of it
we can
all
have a
together.
whole, yeah.
And that
Oh,
is a
gosh,
possibility.
this is like a huge hug for everybody. This is gonna be great.
Maybe you guys
All
could
right.
go condo.
Okay,
Can I make a motion that we receive the communication from Whitman Property Management? And
and there's a second on that.
forward those comments to the
okay.
mayor that it looks like a good offer.
Okay, on the motion receive, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, that motion is received. Now, hold on, let's hold your horses. So we're getting down to the crux of this. Now, I understand that the vast majority are here for Mount Tom Coal Reuse Plant, but I will say a third time, is anyone from Shield Management here? Okay. All right. Shield Management, I realize you're here for a public hearing, but I've got, unfortunately, you are number 6, and you would technically be next, but I'd like to, if you don't mind being patient a little longer, to the both of you, I've got a pretty full room here, and I think your issue is going to take up a little more time than I wanted. So I'd like to get a motion to suspend the rules and take up number 8 if possible, so we can get to the, if that's the will of the body, to take up Mount Tom Coal Plant. But,
Good with that motion to proceed out of order to item number 8.
Second.
okay, on the motion, suspend the rules and proceed out of order, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? No? Okay. Another motion, please?
Motion to take up
Yeah,
item number 8?
Yep.
Yes.
thank you. On the motion, take up number 8. Okay, before us is, okay. So, Mr. Morero is fortunately here with us. I'm going to have to step aside for a minute, 'cause I think we have a little slideshow. But Marcos, why don't you sort of set up where we are and more or less who's here? And then why don't we just take a minute or two for a couple of questions from the committee, just a minute or two, if there are any, and then we'll proceed with the go ahead, sit down. If we'll proceed with the show.
Sure.
So Marcos Morero,
So
proceed.
I'll start talking while Kevin lights you up with the projector.
Oh, he's already got it set up.
So the Mount Tom Power Plant is a coal-powered plant that's been ramping down its operations for several years, which has had a significant impact on the taxes of the city of Holyoke. The taxes paid, just to give you a sense, in 2009 was about 1.7 million. By 2014, it was down to 315,000. In 2011, the City Council, by ordinance, created a Citizen Advisory Group, or CAG for short, great name, to look into what was going on in the Mount Tom Power Plant and options for the future, and gave the group that was composed by citizens representing every ward and several ex officio members of the city, the city assessor, the treasurer, I think the conservation director, the chair of the planning board, and the director of the Board of Health. They were to present a report by the end of 2012, a professionally commissioned report. Unfortunately, there weren't any resources joined to that, so part of the task on their end was to identify resources. Starting in 2012, right after that order was in November of 2011, starting in 2012 and through early 2014, with the legislative delegation, starting back with Senator Knappich, we were able to secure around $100,000 through a state appropriation through the Mass Clean Energy Center to commission such a study as it was indicated in the ordinance. And that's what brings us today here. It's the final presentation of the study. Mass Clean Energy Center worked with the city to put together a request for proposals. We also worked with local stakeholders, many of them that are here, representing. Some of them are neighbor to neighbor. Action for a Healthy Holyoke. I think I'm missing one H. We had discussed with the GDF as well to put a good request for proposals for a consultant group that could complete a scope of work that we would all be happy with what information it was providing us. After procuring that through the Mass Clean Energy Center, Ninegret Partners, which Kevin Hively represents to my left, was the selected group. They had other sub-consultants representing engineering and environmental assessment, a legal team, a community engagement team, and a design team. So they ran several, not only did they study the site per se and studied several other scenarios where power plants were closed and it's contaminated and has natural heritage issues, but also did several community engagement forums to have a better understanding of what the expectations were of the site from the community, what did the community want to see. And then with the constraints of the site, seeing what was the art of the possible going forward. So the presentation that you will hear from Kevin is how is the site constrained and what can be done there. Not necessarily what will be done, but what could be done. The landowner, GDF Suez, has been very accessible throughout and very forthcoming, and so I appreciate that Joe Dalton is here representing GDF Suez. So with that, I would like to turn the floor over to Kevin. Hopefully that's focused enough or has enough power.
Just hold on one second. So Marcus, would you just introduce the I didn't take steno in high school, so I was running as fast as I could. So the consultants are whom and the stakeholders are whom. So neighbor to neighbor, Healthy Holyoke, What else did I?
GDF Suez, members of the community in general that had showed up, just individuals, and I'm sure other organizations that are missing right now.
And Kevin is with whom?
Kevin Hively is the president of Ninigret Partners, which was the lead consultant, and I'll let Kevin
Yeah, hold
talk
on a
about his
second.
team.
Yeah,
It's part of his presentation.
Kevin, just spell your last name for me, please.
Hively.
Okay. And you're president of Ninigret?
Yes.
Okay. And before we get to Mr. Hively, and we'll see, can we have Councilor McGivern?
Just a quick question, Mr. Chairman. Marcus, and I appreciate, this group, and I know we did from the get-go, even before we see the presentation, which I'm looking forward to. One of the missing, or not missing components, but one of the components that I think has to be brought into is the owner of the property. Have Suez been brought into this at any level?
Absolutely,
date?
absolutely. From the get-go, we've had open channels of communications with GDF Suez. Yes, they've seen this study.
Thank you.
Okay.
They've participated in the meetings too.
All right, so,
And they're here.
My ears don't work as well as they used to.
don't ever sell Mr. McGivern short, let me tell you that. Now, Kevin, just, because I know I have to move, but just tell me what you're about to do and how long it will.
Well, assuming that we can get it set up on that screen.
You can.
It'll be about 10 minutes, and what we're going to do is kind of walk through the highlights of the report and explain to people how to read it, because it's kind of built from kind of a bottoms-up type of approach. Starts with the site, the issues with the site, how we went through the community plan process to inform different development options, and then what we did with the development options to understand regulatory and physical constraints of the site, and then looked at some economic impact. And that's what we're gonna basically do, is walk through, so you can visually see it, and if we can't get it set up, I can walk you right through it just as we did and talk through it very quickly.
Okay, now, so the committee knows and the public knows, there are, your assistant provided 10 different reports here, so these will be received by this committee and by city council, but they're available to the public as well. Now, since there are so many people here from the public, I don't mind seeing if somebody wants to suspend the rules and have the public speak, but it could get a little bit unwieldy. So I don't mind doing that, but so we can sort of think about that after we get a 10-minute presentation. Oh, is that okay? Everybody's good to go with that? Councilor Alexander?
Just one quick question. Marcos, is the study available on the OPED website or somewhere on some part of the city website?
It will be available on the holyokeredevelopment.com website. I think it's already available on the project website. Yes.
Great. So it already exists in electronic format, and you'll put a link
Yep.
up to it shortly?
Yep. In the next couple of days, we'll just
Great.
put it up.
Thank
Yep.
Okay, so the public got that, holyokeredevelopment.com.
Yep.
holyokeredevelopment.com. All right, so there's that.
Oh, there it is.
It'll get brighter, just gotta heat up, get moving.
Okay. Okay, well, this isn't gonna be beautiful, but we'll make it work. So, there were a number of people involved in the project. I'm not gonna go through them all in the interest of time, but you can read about it. Basically, how you can read the report is the report begins with the site conditions and the considerations, and that's everything from environmental conditions to a series of natural resource issues, meaning things like wildlife, that kinds of things, floodplain issues. And then what we did is we created what we would call a series of test fits so that we could understand what size and types of things could fit on the site given all of its different considerations. And then we took those development scenarios and they ran them through the regulatory lens, looking at local zoning, state and federal issues, to understand what the regulatory pathway would have to be, and that's all explained in the report. And also the site conditions, by the way, has its own separate memo in the appendix. It's quite detailed. And then we looked at a very high level the economic impact. And then what we did is we took everything, in the case of Holyoke, the 3 different scenarios, and put them side by side and how they met with the reuse principles. There's a detailed appendix. This is all of the information. So basically what the methodology was, what we wanted to start with was their fatal flaws. So this eliminated the ability to do anything. And then we worked with the community to figure out what were the options. We created the scenarios as I talked about. We did this high-level impact, and then we modified them based on the community feedback from our June meeting. Marcos went through the thing just to give you a flavor for what we did in terms of the project timeline and the community workshop stuff. We did 3 community meetings. We did a scenario survey. We did a bunch of mobile and online workshops. We were in the library and a bunch of other places. Why is this doing that? There we go. We also established a series, we worked with the community to establish a series of principles. That was one of the things that we did in our first 2 workshops, and you can see what they are, but basically they wanted it to do something more than just one use. They wanted to be able to get access to the river. They obviously wanted to generate new tax revenue. They wanted it to be as green as possible and carbon neutral, and they wanted to take advantage of the existing infrastructure. And then the other things that we did is understand what the site issues were. And again, as I said, there's a pretty detailed memo regarding all of the different site issues that you can read. It's part of the appendix. And it is also, sections of it are translated into Spanish. And basically what we did based on the community feedback that we received and the site issues was we created 3 scenarios. And again, these are not meant to be exhaustive. So there's the possibility that you could do other things here. What they were really meant to understand is what could you do physically, and then what would be possible and what would you have to do regulatorily to make stuff happen. So the first one was a solar array with a series of public amenities, which I'll get into in a second. And then the last one was a solar array, anaerobic digestion, and some public amenities. Again, the intent of this is to make sure that we wanted to have an informed, productive discussion so the community really understood what some of the different issues were. Regardless of what you actually wanted to do there are certain things that would have to be done to make anything possible. The first scenario was basically 5 megawatts of solar power. You can see the configuration. The line there is where the transmission line is. There's also the issue of, in this case, we left the existing power plant. If you got rid of the power plant, you could nearly double the amount to about 11.4 megawatts of solar power, and you can basically see what that would happen. There are some issues, and the issues are, these sites are designed to take into account the regulatory issues like Chapter 91 and some other things that exist. This scenario is, again, a green power model, but involves public amenities. So there is a small kayak boat launch. There is the 5+ megawatts of electrical power. There is a path that could be used as a bike path along part of the site. And then we assumed, for sake of argument, that the agriculture would stay, but that has since changed. The one thing that you'll see is there's a lot of blank space. One of the interesting problems of this space, and I'll just go into it very quickly because it does affect a lot of what you think about in terms of development, is when you fill land, when you occupy land in a floodplain, you have to create what's known as flood storage capacity, which basically means the floodwaters have to be able to go somewhere. And so that's one of the things that we took into consideration, just to give you an idea of the level of detail we went into. And again, it's basically the same solar array model with the public amenities. The last scenario that we went through involves a couple of other more elaborate things. The community wanted to talk about including agriculture on the site. There was also, again, the continuation of the green energy, the public amenities that we talked about before. What we figured out, given the environmental issues that are on the site, that it would probably, that the agriculture, where there, except for the present area for agriculture, would probably have to be greenhouses. It would have to be above the surface. It probably would not be allowed to penetrate the surface. So that's why you see greenhouses here. Again, I want to just reiterate that what we were looking for was physical and regulatory fit. We did not go into any kind of in-depth financial feasibility for any of these things, but we wanted to get a sense of what could fit and what you would have to do to make it fit. So every one of these issues that you see and every one of these development patterns that you see, there is an analysis as to the zoning issues that would have to be confronted, the state regulatory issues, and whether there was any federal regulatory issues that would have to be taken care of in order to do this. Again, there are a myriad of different programming options. There were a lot of really good ideas. There have been a number of ideas that have come up since, but what we think the city now has is a bit of a toolkit to understand what are all of the different issues that would have to be confronted and you'd have to take on. There is nothing that would preclude redevelopment of the site, but it's not the easiest site in the history of mankind to redevelop either. And I think that's also something to be very important to take into consideration, as well as that it remains in private hands. And then again, you can see when we took down the power plant, you basically just increase the capacity of what you do. And then, so this basically is the table of contents, and after this I'm finished, as promised. So this is essentially the table of contents. One of the things that we did, there's a couple things I want to highlight here. We did a case study review, and so instead of looking at how other power plants were necessarily reused, what we actually looked at was power plants that had gone through reuse who had similar regulatory issues to ours. So in our case, floodplain regulatory, natural wildlife issues, and how they mitigated their issues so that it would help inform how that might happen here. The other thing I want to draw your attention to is the appendices. There are a number of things that are in the appendices. It's everything from a very elaborate review of all of the public documentation as it relates to the sites and their condition, all the way through to what would need to be what would have to happen in order to get an additional railroad crossing, to if you were to do some kind of commercial or industrial development on the site in the area that's elevated above the floodplain, and you'll be able to see that through the maps, what that might entail in terms of the amount of square footage you could possibly do. Just to be clear and on the record, we did not include stormwater management in that. It was just literally physical fit of a building and how much parking you would have to occupy, but we did not take into consideration stormwater, which would be an issue since it's in a floodplain and on the river. And with that, I'd be glad to take any questions.
Okay. Kevin, thank you very much for the presentation. Marcos, why don't you just briefly follow up? So we've got, well, first, before you get, just the folks that volunteered, are they here? The folks, many folks who volunteered for the CAG?
We have a few. Rick Purcell is here, a citizen member of the CAG, and Andrew Smith, ex officio member of the CAG. Not sure if we have any others. Nope.
Are there any other members of the Citizens Advisory Group that are here? Okay, Rick,
No.
Rick and Andrew, all right. Well, thank you, Rick, for being here. Thank you for your volunteer work. Andrew, as always, thank you for as our conservation director. So thank you for your work, as always. And so I would suggest, next steps. Where are we going from here?
So as Kevin was saying, the site is significantly constrained because of being next to a river. It's a floodplain, and therefore the measures that, I would say the shorthand is the regulation prohibits or makes very, very difficult most development, but in reality the regulation is there to make sure that nothing gets flooded and taken downstream. So that's the biggest constraint. Going forward, the landowner, GDF Suez, still has intentions of keeping the site. They are in the process of getting the permitting to clean up the parts of the site that should be cleaned up, where the coal was being stored, for example. There is also the matter of the building itself, which sits on the prime real estate because it's above the floodplain. I don't want to speak for the owner, but they're being proactive in their attempt to take the building down, and that would open up more scenarios for development, as Kevin was indicating. So this is the study really allows us to right set expectations for the site, that this isn't something that can easily or likely be turned into a 120 acre, 140 acre, largely developed site, but it does have potential in some areas. And that's something that we're gonna continue engaging with GDF Suez. When you consider that you have a site to be developed, it's not a bad thing to have a multinational corporation with the possibility to capitalize the development as a partner. So it's a conversation we've appreciated having with GDF Suez, and we'll continue having that.
Okay, and is GD, are they here?
Yes, they are here.
Did they want to speak briefly, address any of this?
That would be up to them.
Does anybody from GD want to speak? Okay, so we'll just,
Motion to suspend?
okay, on the motion to suspend, allow GD Suez to address City Council. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, okay. If you would, sir, just make sure the microphone is on, and then if you would just identify yourself, your title, address, that sort of thing, and then go from
All
there.
right, thank you. I'm John Shu. I'm Vice President of Operations for GDF Suez, in charge of our generating assets in New England. And like Marco said, we've tried to be very involved in this process. I think we only missed one meeting due to timeliness, but we've been in consultation with Marcos and the group that prepared the report. So in all, it's been a very interesting process. We're pretty much in agreement with the findings. I think had this report come from us, it might have been taken with a little bit of skepticism, but for it coming from a third-party independent consultant, it's a good way to communicate all of the constraints and issues with the site, and to kind of communicate what is physically feasible on that site.
Thank you, Mr. Shu. So, I guess it's a little bit too early, but if you have a hint for GD's intentions for the site and GD's intentions for the physical building, the smokestack, that sort of thing. Do we have any announcements to make?
Sure. So our intent right now is we're going to maintain ownership of the site for future development. We are currently working on the option of a solar farm in what we refer to as the farmer's field. We're pursuing that development. Not quite ready for final approval from our executive management, but we are pushing forward on that. The reason it's going in the farmer's field is we can build that above. It's minimal impact to the floodplain. We can provide offsets because the timeline to do remediation for the rest of the site where we have coal ash stored and the physical power plant, that's probably a multi-year process to get all of that taken care of. And then with regards to that, we have engaged a consultant to help us with the remediation, and we're currently evaluating contractors and companies regarding the demolition of the power plant and what that timeline would look like.
Well, that's all good news. So and that sounds like there's some progress on remediating the coal ash. So And I think probably a lot of stakeholders really want to hear more about that. Is it possible to expand on that as far as a timeline, as far as what you envision being done? Or if it's hard to say, Mr. Shu, you're under no obligation, but I just was curious.
No, I mean, the demolition of the power plant is probably going to be at least 2 years. There is some asbestos there, so we have to do a survey for that. That will all be removed properly, and then you can get into the main demolition of the main power plant. There are some outbuildings that could be removed much quicker. The elevators, conveyors, things like that can all be demolished and taken away. Remediations of the coal ash storage, that's a little bit too early to talk about what's really going to happen there. We're working with the different environmental groups on that too.
The smokestack, where does that fit into
Our
this?
plan is, as part of demolition, to remove the smokestack. We want to see that, but before we can do that, we're working on putting up we have cellular communications equipment on that smokestack. We have to have a place to put that equipment before we can tear that stack down.
Correct. So when we've had the vendor before this committee,
Right.
and I think from our end, they're, at least from this committee's end, the city council, they've been approved and they're moving forward.
Yeah. I mean, we've been, so our current, it's going to be a multi-year effort for total redevelopment of the site, but, there's just a small piece of the property that's above the floodplain, as Marco said, the prime real estate. We're not doing anything with that. We don't have any immediate plans for that, holding back in case something interesting comes up that is, financially feasible to do there.
Okay, do other committee members want to ask Mr. You might take a question too, Mr. Shu?
Sure.
Do other committee members want to ask a question?
Sure, I've got a couple.
Councilor Alexander?
Thanks for coming down, and thanks for being so engaged in this whole process. Obviously, you have a lot of concern. So we have, I think, scenario 1A and B and scenario 2A and B kind of presented in here as schematic concept things. Are all four of those sort of within the wheelhouse of what GDF Suez would say, yeah, it's possible we could move in that, or are some of these like, are you crazy? What were you thinking?
They're all within possibility. I mean, we are an energy company. I think anything that we do in the area of redevelopment is going to have to do with energy.
So you like the 11 megawatt solar installations, not the 4
Well,
megawatt
there's
solar
I think
installations.
there's
That's
some
understandable.
current issues on putting sites over 5 megawatts of solar because of the way the parcels are aligned. But
Okay.
I think what's more likely to happen long term, and this is my opinion, we're very early in it, but you're going to see something more along the line what you see in scenario 3.
I didn't even get to scenario 3. I didn't realize there was a scenario. Look at that.
So there's lots of little different things there.
Okay.
There's a solar farm.
Each one of these comes with an A and a B, and the A is always without demolition of the existing power plant. Is there any thought of adaptive reuse of the physical structure? Or is Suez's intent to tear down that power plant any which way?
Our intent long term is to tear it down. I don't know that it could be reused.
Okay.
And I mean, any reuse of that would be by someone else.
Okay. I'm just curious.
Trying to
because
convert
literally
it to
every single
natural
one of
gas
these
or
is
something.
paired
There's not
with an
much
A
there to
showing the power
reuse.
plant stays put.
Yeah.
But okay, so the intent is to rip it down and have a clean subsite there. None of these do show, and as Councilor Bartley mentioned, we did approve the 200-foot cell tower to take the equipment that's sitting on and they were in front of us with quite a bit of urgency that you guys were kicking them off the smokestack, and so we sort of assumed the smokestack must be coming down sometime soon, but you're just trying to get the option open, basically, so you can take it down when you're ready? Is that sort of where you are?
They need to, so we want to move forward. It's taken them quite a long time to get to the point where they could get approval to put up another tower. So yeah, they do have a sense of urgency.
Okay. And that's fine. I have no issue with that. That's not that particular location I'm not seeing on any of these schematics. Is it in all of your minds, I'm not asking anyone in particular, that is not interfering with any of these possibilities in any material way? Is that true?
I mean, if I could address that, it doesn't, as Kevin was saying, that the scenarios are conceptual and it doesn't materially change the recommendations. The schematics were drawn up sometime just before the permitting process for the tower had come in, and what kicked in after that was a period of feedback and comments from the public of what they wanted, other analysis. Pretty sure that the amount of space taken up by the antenna didn't significantly alter what the scenarios were.
Okay, and then I guess my last question is just anaerobic digestion facility. Is that a compost heap? What is that? Not, what is it? There's big long explanation. What is it?
They bring in, biomass, different types of waste. You go through a digestion process without oxygen, anaerobic. It creates a methane gas, and then you would do something with that methane gas. You'd burn it.
So the output product you're looking to create is methane?
Is a
natural
gas,
gas, more or
yeah.
less? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Those are all of my questions for now. Thank you. Thank you all.
Any other counselors? Okay. Mr. Smith, did you want to add anything? Ms. Murrow? Kevin? Mr. Shu, thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Okay. What did we, Rick, let me ask you a question. Do you think any of the public wants to address us right this second? Or very briefly? Very briefly?
I'm sorry. Yes, neighbor to neighbor and possibly Action for a Healthy Holyoke would like to talk about it.
Okay, well, this is Rick Parcell, 99 Martin Street in Ward 3.
99 Martin Street.
I'm familiar with Rick, so he lives in the ward I represent. So we're good there. So what is, if does the committee want to hear from these two organizations?
Sure. They put a
Briefly?
lot of work in.
Okay, so I guess I need a motion for that.
Do a motion to suspend, allow the public to make some comments.
Okay, that's been seconded. On the motion, all in favor? Aye. Okay, Rick, just take the microphone back for a second. Just identify who would want to address us and.
From neighbor to neighbor, Hector. He'll introduce himself.
Okay, Hector, just your name, your address, and your organization.
Yes, my name is Hector Figueroa. I'm an organizer with Neighbor to Neighbor here in Holyoke. I live in Florence. I guess we are, first of all, we want to thank the members of the Community Advisory Group for their continued work and support throughout this whole process, and also to the Holyoke City Council who also requested the study to be done. We have been involved throughout the process. We had some concerns mid-process that have been addressed by Ninigret, so we're very grateful for that. I guess where we stand right now is we want to make sure that we want a clear timeline. I know the Holyoke residents want a clear timeline of what's going to happen on the site. The study is just a study, a review study of what's possible. In the end, it's up to Angie, formerly known as GDF SUES, to decide what's going to happen on the site. So for us, it will be really good to find out exactly what the timeline is, and also what kind of power generation, solar power generation is going to be there, and in making sure that in accordance to what's supposed to happen as far as capping the site. I know there's some issues in regards to some endangered species that are not located in areas where the coal ash is contained. So it would be good to have a clear, I guess, statement from GDF of what that timeline is as far as capping, cleanup. I know there's a couple of slush lagoons that need to be cleaned up, but also as far as what the power generation from solar will be like. And if there's something that members of the community have been talking about, perhaps considering that GDF profited tremendously over a 50-year span by burning dirty coal that affected the health of Holyokers for many, many generations. For those who don't know, Holyoke has one of the highest asthma rates in the state, and there's a clear linkage to burning dirty coal and asthma. So I think it would be it will be good for GDF to perhaps consider ways that moving forward, the clean renewable energy that will power our future, that somehow that we can find ways for the city of Holyoke to benefit from that, whether it's through some kind of community share solar project on the side, maybe setting aside some of the panels, a percentage of the panels for community benefits. It's some of the ideas that are being discussed within the community. So that's all I have for right now. Thank you.
Hector, thank you very much.
Is there anybody from Action for a Healthy Holyoke that'd like to talk? Mr. Griffin, would you like to talk? No. Can I just throw my 2 cents in? Rick Purcell, 99 Martin Street.
Go ahead, Rick.
Everything, the owners and the CAG and the city and the Clean Energy Center have all been very helpful in this process, and we lost the tax base, and that's important to the city, and it's important to the elected officials to get our tax base so that we can do it. But one of the things I'd like to ask the owners is, it's great that you're doing, and I thanked you already a 1,000 times, is when you start doing the work, like the demolition, and you start building the solar panels, is that you hire residents from here in Holyoke so that you're creating jobs for residents here in Holyoke. Because like Hector said, we have paid for whatever was going up in the air. The whole planet is paid for that. But hire locally so that when you start doing the work, I'm not the king of Holyoke or anything, but we would like the jobs to be created for Holyoke residents, and that would help us pay taxes too. Thanks.
Okay, so Rick, thank you very much. Councilor Alexander, you want to make one final comment?
I just had a couple of questions actually for Marcos. And you may or may not have the answers to anybody who's got the answer, I'm happy to hear it. If not, maybe you could get them. Do you know what total, so this is between 4 and 11 megawatts of solar seems to be the kind of spectrum of numbers that falls out of this work. Do you know how much solar is being generated in the city now? Does anybody know that?
How much solar is being generated throughout the city?
Yeah.
I don't have that number.
Ballpark, or how much the G&E is generating at least? I know that's in a few fields.
A significant amount. We were recently ranked in the top 5 in the state, so probably around. I don't want to even throw out a number because I'll be making it up. But
okay, so I'm going to ask you for 2
more than
numbers, and
5.
if you could just get back to us with, I'd be curious
Sure.
to put this potential reuse into context a little bit. One is how much solar is there in the city today. One is what's the total electric demand for the city, average load, something like that. Just to kind of, again, put these numbers into a little bit of context. And then last question, and I might need the gentleman from GDF back again. Sorry, thank you, hi. Do you have a planned source for the biomass? Is there some thought behind that, or just it's another way to generate power, and so you're a power company?
So the planned biomass, the digester, was one of the possibilities that could be put there that was presented or put up by the consultants. It's something that we may or may not do depending on its financial feasibility. You would have to truck a lot of stuff in.
I understand, but it's not like you were looking at East Hampton and going, oh my God, they're generating millions of tons of wood chips, let's put a biomass plant over here, or something like that. There's no planned connection to an existing source.
No, through the process, the community was very involved in clean types of things, and that's one of the things that's out there is digesters.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Marcos?
Well, one thing that's coming down the pipeline is the state is emphasizing more and more what to do with food waste and food products. So that's why biodigesters is something that's in the zeitgeist as to one possible way of dealing with that.
Thank you.
Thanks for the crossword puzzle word. And and just what your source for the 5%, if you would, Mark, you said that Holyoke is in top 5% for solar.
Top 5 communities.
Top 5 communities. I'm sorry.
I saw that ranking probably a year ago, so I don't remember. But it was
in the Commonwealth. Is that what you're saying, or
yes, in the Commonwealth.
Is that for solar you're talking about?
For solar specifically, yes. The gas and electric has about 90% carbon-free electric sources. So the lion's share of that is hydro, with some significant portion of solar, and then they own some nuclear power entitlements as well. On a good rainy year, in fact, in 2012, for example, we were carbon neutral on the electric production. More water on the river, more power generated.
Okay.
And if I may, just one quick, sorry, I'm taking over the microphone. Rick Purcell again, 99 Martin Street. Another thing I would do, if we were to become carbon neutral, we could be an example for the state of Massachusetts of what a carbon neutral city looks like, which would also create tourism for our city. We can get people to come to Hoyoke because we're carbon neutral and increase our tax base. And there's a lot of benefits from being carbon neutral.
Thanks, Rick. Okay, we're all good? Counselor, all set?
All
I
set.
guess we'll just take a motion
Motion
that,
to receive the report?
Make a motion in the order been complied with.
yeah.
To-
Yeah, we don't really have an order. We just
Yeah.
received the report, communication, so I'll have to figure
Motion
out.
to receive the communication and recommend that the council take a look at it.
Complying with the
Can I get-
2011 order,
Can I
sorry.
get a second on that? Okay, just, Marcos, I got to report back to city council on this more or less. So, is a CAG, their job is finished?
Pretty much. There are articles of dissolution, but it only calls them to do two things. One is get the resources for a study, and then commission the study and present it to the city council. So that was the intent with doing this, following up on that order. So de facto, I would say, yes, there is no, as per the order, there is no other task for the CAG.
So there probably is an order that preceded me in the jacket relative to the CAG, I would say, so.
Well, the order became ordinance. It was sealed. It was done in November of 2011.
Okay.
So this is
that
complying
again-
with an ordinance.
That again preceded me. Okay, so we can, we'll just take that motion and,
Yeah, I would do one thing, which is to publicly thank the CAG for all the hard work and all the effort that went into this, and the product is great. And
yeah, I certainly want to
thanks.
get their names and so I can recognize them, Marco said on
Yes.
Tuesday, so. Okay, so on the motion, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, okay, so thanks very much. I'll let you break down. We'll take about a 2-minute recess while they're getting the materials, and they'll go back to regular order, okay? Thank you, everybody. 2-minute recess. Marcos, you're not leaving.
Does anyone else want a copy of the report?
sí, todavía sigue, todavía sigue. ¿Qué pasó, Ignacio?
She's here. Marcos? Yeah, I think we're ready to go back, I think we're ready to go back to, regular order.
Motion to take up item number 6.
I can second that. Sure will. Item number 6. Before us,
Special permit application for a commercial drive-through,
thank you.
fast food drive-through for Shield Hotel Management
All right.
at 265 Whitnam and Whiting Farms Road.
Well done. Shield Management.
You need to take a vote on whether to take it up.
We'll take it up. Just want to get their attention. Yeah, okay.
Can the cameras catch it if it's over there?
I
Do they
don't
pan
know,
to the
I don't know if
audience?
the cameras can catch it.
There's one there,
Yeah,
there's one above there, so I don't
the camera can definitely catch it in front of the microphone, so you can set up right there. Yeah, and if Ryan sends me a text, Ryan's running the cameras downstairs. If Ryan sends me a text that has to be moved, then, I mean, it's pretty small anyhow, so I'm not sure how great the cameras are gonna be able to zoom in on it, but Ryan will do that. Okay, so, on the motion to take up number 6, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so moved. Okay, so before us, we have, we're missing Mr. Morrell. Okay. Thank you, Tiamar. Okay, so before us, we have, I'm just gonna ask you to sort of identify yourself, your name, and your company, please.
My name is John Furman. I'm the managing director of EHB, or the engineers of record.
Quick question. John, could you spell Furman, please?
Counselor Alexander, you're recognized.
Super briefly, like in one sentence, what is the project, just so everybody knows what we're talking about?
The project here
This is the old Holyoke Hotel property? Okay.
Okay, and Mr. Furman, if I'm just seeing this right now. I'm just going to read very briefly something into the record, then I'm much more interested in hearing from you. But this is from VHB, it's a narrative to accompany a special permit for drive-through at Ingleside Square, Whiting Farms Road. This is requesting a special permit for a drive-through for one of the parcels, which we've identified as a McDonald's, to be located on the Whiting Farms Road portion of the property, which used to be the Holiday Inn, then it became Holyoke Hotel, and there's some various other names. If the public is familiar with it, it's been a series of ups and downs, mainly downs, with that property the last 3+ years. Now, if you travel up that way, you'll see, once you get past the Gary Rome development project, you'll get up to the corner of Whiting Farms and Lower Westfield, and you will see you've seen demolition going on. Now you're seeing construction. I believe Vitamin Shop is pretty well along. I think the couple hotels are in the nascent stages, and McDonald's has not yet broken ground. Is that fair to say, Mr. Furman? Okay. All right, and so the public is also should be aware that it's within the purview of the Holyoke City Council to review special permit applications for drive-throughs. Now, that's a whole other debate that possibly Mr. Alexander would want to have another time when he runs for office again, but yet it is before us and before this committee. And so the one salient point or one of the salient points I took out of here is that the traffic patterns through the site pertaining to stacking drive-through are standard designs for McDonald's units. Okay, so it's a standard design drive-through, and it's orientated so as not to stack waiting vehicles within the municipal right-of-way. So that I figured probably be one of the questions about how this drive-through is going to work. We had a similar type of situation over on Dwight Street with the Pride gas station that looked like it was going into the right-of-way, and Mr. Boldock, the owner of Pride, revised, and so now the cars will not be stacked up in the right-of-way, which is Dwight Street. So with that, Mr. Merrill, did you want to have anything to set up here, or do you want to just have Mr. Furman kind of start rolling?
Just quickly indicating that the site itself was permitted by the planning board, the general site. It was the first time in the history of Holyoke site plan review where we permitted a master plan for the general aspects of the site, traffic conditions, patterns of traffic in the site, utilities, and so forth. Then the condition of the permit was then individual tenants or individual parts of the site would have to go through any remaining permits, such as signage once tenants were secured, and such as drive-throughs in the case of this tenant, McDonald's. So that's why they're before you now. But the rest of the site is already permitted, and that's why they're already doing work on the site.
Okay, so site plan review. So after site plan review, the planning board permitted this project. Is that accurate?
Yes, we wanted to provide the tenant with a pad-ready site to be able to more easily attract tenants, and so with a master plan approved on their site, they were able to do that more easily. However, there are some things you can't permit unless you have the specifics of the tenant, such as the size of the sign, for example, or in this case, if you know that you have a drive-through, there's a special permit for that, and in this case, that comes at the tail end of the process.
By getting it past site ready, it almost sounds like we're, say it with me, business friendly. It almost sounds like that. Almost.
I prefer business sensible. It's just a sensible way of going about things.
Mr. Furman, take the mic.
When
strike that. Councilor McGivern?
Logistical, procedural thought or question. Marcus, Mr. Furman, this is a public hearing, so whatever's presented to us, we have to keep.
Okay, so,
We also need to open a
you know
public
what,
hearing.
that's right, Counselor McGivern, geez, you're spot on again. Let's do that motion first, Counselor.
Motion to open the public
Make a
hearing.
motion to open a public hearing. Second.
Okay, on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, public hearing is now open.
So.
Thank you.
Do we have, so we don't have to grab all those easel things, schematic drawings, I'm sure cost a few bucks?
Joe,
Do we
we-
have something for us?
Joe, I think we've got it.
The application, everything that I'm presenting here,
Is
you
in
have
this- yeah, it
duplicates as
looks like
part of
it's
the
in here.
application.
I see it.
Looks like it's in here, Joe.
Thank you.
All right, thanks.
Okay.
Yeah, you can, I'm gonna
I
give you the
can't
whole.
see that far up.
So just to elaborate slightly on Marco's statement, I will say that, you know, it was the first time the planning board ever permitted a site not knowing what the uses are. But it was a process, a learning process for everybody. We helped the planning board kind of stage the approvals so that it's set up to give them the comfort level that we weren't just going to run rampant with whatever came in here later. And I have to say that as the first example, it's done very well in the process. We've been through all the sites that you see here on the site right now. There's only one more remaining to come in through the planning board, which is the proposed hotel in the back. But it was a very good process, and I just want to mention that the planning board was very helpful in trying to make this process go, and other developers may benefit from that effort, you know, coming forward.
Okay, and I know you'll spread the word on that. And Marcos and Tessa should be, you know, I've complimented you here before, so, and I really do mean it. You do a great job. So I want you to know that as well, that and I think everybody appreciates it. So, thank you for that. Could you just give a Reader's Digest overview?
Absolutely.
And then we'll drill down to the McDonald's.
Certainly.
Thank you.
So you actually described the site well in your opening remarks. It's located on the intersection of Lower Westfield Road on this plan, which is showing up and down, and Whiting Farms Road, which is left to right. It is the former Holyoke Hotel property, and basically the project started as a redevelopment of that. We went through a number of renditions prior to submittal to planning board to come up with an optimum redevelopment plan, and what it includes is this building on the side here, which you see is the actual remnants of the existing hotel. The existing hotel actually goes completely across the site, and most of it, 2/3 of it, has been demolished. In the back, what is planned and is the only unpermitted use right now is a proposed another hotel. It has its back towards the Interstate 91 on-ramp, kind of going counterclockwise around the site. This right here is a pad site for a full sit-down restaurant. It is currently permitted as an Applebee's, and all utilities are stubbed to that site, and it's ready to start construction as soon as the pad is turned over to them. Going again further clockwise, what you see on site now is the only new building that has been constructed, and that was permitted as a retail and a restaurant site. I don't believe that the restaurant has been selected for that small end cap right now, but the other two retail pieces, which are the longer pieces of the building, are all constructed and they're fit out. One of them, which is actually the vitamin shop, and I'm uncertain what the other one is right now. And the last project, which we're here tonight for, is what we're calling on the master plan as the fast food restaurant with drive-through. And it has gone through planning board and has received permits for McDonald's. And this is actually the last permit that is needed to afford the drive-through part of that site. If you've been by it lately, you'll see that it's just one big mound of dirt and debris. The access is cut in from Lower Westfield Road, from Whiting Farms Road. The secondary access goes through the gas station parcel, which is already protected by easements. It's been there since day one, and it's a major part of this development. And I guess the last thing I'll say that as a master plan development, it fell to the developer to mitigate any of the impacts associated with this site. So even though we were not sure if we would ever get a drive-through, which we're here tonight for, we went through the mitigation process as if a drive-through existed. So we have worked out a mitigation package with Holyoke Department of Public Works and Mass DOT, which we are currently working on final design for. As far as the stormwater goes, we've worked with the city engineering department to design a stormwater plan that mitigates the flow for a 100-year design storm. We've worked with the Conservation Commission to allow discharges into the wetland that are here.
and to actually improve the discharges that are already there. The ones that are already there were failed and were actually causing erosion in the wetlands. So we've actually improved the quality of water going into this wetland, as well as the condition of the embankment in there. So that's a general overview of the project.
Okay, thank you.
All right. So moving forward to McDonald's. So what we have in front of you here is our sheet C3, and this was taken out of the master plan approved set. So, and I just want to, again, for reference point, identify that we're looking at this site right here. Also in your packet, you should have a plan from McDonald's engineer, which is Bowler Associates. And we have gone through and basically included this plan as part of the application. But what McDonald's does is they use their own engineer to verify the engineering that we did as the landlord's engineer. So the information is the same, the building placement is the same, the layout is generally the same, utility connections are all the same, it's just done by another engineer. So when we laid out the site, we knew we had to come to the Holyoke City Council for a special permit for drive-through. So on your application, there are actually 4 standards for the design of drive-throughs, which we actually made sure that we adhere to as part of this. So the first one basically says that no such facility shall be located on a lot measuring less than 100 by 100. So we have frontage of approximately 500 feet along Whiting Farms Road, which, and then the depth from this frontage all the way to the Interstate 91 ramp is almost 1,000 feet. So we meet that first requirement. The second condition or regulation said no part of any such establishment shall be located within 100 feet of any residential district, except that facilities may be located up to 50 feet from a residence if screened. And there's a few other words there. So in this area here, there are actually no residents within the area where this drive-through would be. So again, we meet that second condition. The third condition or regulation, entrance or exits for vehicles should not be within 200 feet as measured along with public street or school playground, church or related facility, museum, library, hospital, or nursing home. There is a school which is located further down Whiting Farms Road, which is the only use located or only use identified within that regulation, and we are in excess of 200 feet from that. So we meet that condition. And the last condition or regulation says access or egress points shall be well defined, shall be located not less than 50 feet apart, and should not be located within 50 feet or similar points on adjacent properties or the intersections of 2 street right-of-way lines. So this is the one condition, I guess running to the end game of it, we meet it. But when we ended up designing the site, the existing site access point is located right at the back side of the existing gas station that's there, which is on an adjacent property. And as part of the traffic mitigation plan, we found it necessary to take the entrance and close it and move it over to be across from the CVS driveway, which is located here. So the access, this parcel, as a standalone leased area, does not have direct access to the municipal right-of-way. So access from their site is through this intersection, which we have designed a signal for. We have submitted it to the Department of Public Works, and it has been approved. So entrance and exit is through this shopping center entrance. We have an access road that runs along the back of the parcel right across the site, and there are 2 access points into this leased area from here. They are functioning as a one-way circulation pattern through the tenant space. So this being the entrance through here, you come in, I'm sorry, this being the entrance coming through here, you come around, you enter the drive-through, and then you pick up here on this side of the building, and then you can exit here, or if you desire to go to Lower Westfield Road, you can cross back through the site, exit here, go through the gas station, and then you would exit into the municipal right-of-way at that point there.
Wait, where would you exit at? Yes.
Yeah.
Where's that one? Where's that exit going?
That exit goes onto the access road that runs across the back of the site. So this is an access road here. It's not municipal, it's part of the development. Runs right through here, and that driveway is right here.
Is that a road that is, I'm sorry, is that a road that is discrete from surrounding paved areas? Is there
It
something
is.
that defines it as a road?
It is, yep. So what you're probably familiar with is the drive aisles that are there now, which is just a paved surface intermingling amongst the parking spaces. It's tough to define. When you have cars there, it makes it a little easier, but still, you can cross across the parking spaces and you can, zigzag through the parking area. So what we have here is we have almost a little four-way intersection on site. So when you come up the roadway, you have a decision point here. You can go straight through the site to the proposed hotel. You can take a right and you can go to the existing hotel. You can take a left and you have a couple decision points here. You can go into the McDonald's tenant space through either of these two curb cuts off of that internal road, or you can go down to the end and then take a right, and then that would give you access to the Applebee's and the retail space. If you continue to want to go through and visit this, and you're heading in this general manner as part of your travels, you could swing into McDonald's, you could come back out, go through the gas station, and hit Lower Westfield Road.
Okay, this isn't like the Hotel California, right? Once you go in, you never leave, right?
We work very hard with the
so-
DPW and the city engineer to make sure that the traffic patterns through the site, pedestrian connectivity was huge with the planning board, as I'm sure Marcos will attest to.
So on the McDonald's, the drive-through portion, so where do you order and where do you pick up?
The McDonald's template currently has two ordering locations, which they basically did, I think, the one on Maple Street over.
Okay, yeah.
So there's two order locations. One is here, and one is here at the back of the restaurant. So you would enter in through here, come in. You could pick a lane. They eventually merge, and then you order here, and you pick up on the side of the building here.
And are there two pickup windows planned?
The McDonald's prototype has two pickup windows. The first one is the pay window. The second one is the product delivery.
Gotcha. Okay.
Okay, and then the one little tricky part of this, so tell me again about the traffic signal and that sort of thing, and that impact. And so it's directly in front of the CVS entryway on Whiting Farms?
That's correct.
So you're planning a four-way signal?
And what are we doing here?
So as part of the mitigation plan, we located the driveway to be directly across from the CVS driveway. And so this will be fully actuated, a traffic signal in four directions. So because we are in such proximity to the DOT signals, we are coordinating the operations of this signal with the signal that is located at Whiting Farms Road and Lower Westfield Road. And then as part of the mitigation effort agreed to by the Department of Transportation, VHB and the developer have been tasked with analyzing all the signals from Homestead in Lower Westfield, either side of I-91, this signal, the one in front of Holyoke Crossing, and this signal here, and developing a coordination plan that takes into account traffic patterns at different times of the year.
Okay, so, well, that sounds great. I'll say that. But, there are, believe it or not, a fair amount of pedestrians that kind of walk around.
That is true.
That area. And so, what thought have we put into, no turn on red type of question marks? We have dedicated lanes. How's that going to shake out?
So as part of the DOT's review of the entire area, they conducted a road safety audit, and I want to say it was back in January or February of this year. And for those of you that are unfamiliar with what a road safety audit is, it's conducted by the owners of the intersections, which at this case was Mass DOT, and it invited stockholders who had a say in the operations of this area traffic-wise. And that included Holyoke Police, Holyoke Fire, it included Holyoke Engineering, members of the DOT, members of the community were invited. And it was basically just a informal session to identify you as a commuter or you as a signal owner. Well, how are you seeing that this all operates? And then part of that road safety audit was inspection of all 5 signals. And what they found out on a pedestrian level is that this intersection here, Lower Westfield and Whiting Farms Road, is city-owned. And none of the pedestrian facilities here were working. The lights were burned out, the push buttons didn't work.
That's a shock. I cannot possibly
So-
believe that.
So this developer was tasked with fixing that. So they're fixing current problems. In addition to that, our design here is fully actuated to account for pedestrian movements through the site. So, so we have a crossing to get from the sidewalk on the east side to the sidewalk on the west side. We have sidewalks across the driveways. So even though they're driveways and they're not municipal, you would associate a crosswalk usually with something municipally owned. The driveways, because they're part of a signal, become part of the pedestrian path and have to be protected by a crossing. So the CVS driveway and the driveway for this development also have push buttons. And so we worked with the DPW. This would actually be a city-owned signal once it's completed and certified operational. As we were going through the development, the planning board was very in tune with pedestrian connectivity. And we had thrown crosswalks in here where we initially thought that they made sense. But then they went through and said, you know, what if you're at McDonald's and you want to get to Applebee's? So we actually added a lot of crosswalks in the area so that you can actually get from one to the other without having to walk outside of a protected area. So pedestrian activity was high on the planning board's approval list at the master plan level.
Well, I guess I'm more interested, I guess that's great inside the project, but I guess I'm just interested in the Morris Donahue School. I mean, a lot of kids are going to attract it to McDonald's, and they're generally going to be walking from Morris Donahue School to that facility.
Yep, and we've taken care of that with our signal. We provided crossings from one side of the road to the other.
Okay, how about back up the street a little bit? Because when you're at Morris Donahue School, a lot of those kids are just going to cross right from there.
Well,
they're going to go right
limit,
across Whiting Farms and not necessarily going to walk up to CVS and then...
Yeah, our limit of work in our mitigation area, and that mitigation area was defined by the Department of Public Works and the Planning Board of what we would have actual impact on. And so it actually ended at our property line, and it went towards the mall and then up towards I-91. So the problem with crosswalks in front of the schools is that they tend to be mid-block crosswalks because they're not protected by a signal. And the municipality, they usually shy away from those because you have a pedestrian who is walking between two painted lines and thinks they're protected. And that's why a lot of accidents occur with pedestrians, because the pedestrian has the confidence to walk out there because he thinks he's protected. The driver doesn't know it exists. So that's why we and the municipalities usually include the crosswalks at signals, because car volumes are stopped at that point. It's a dedicated light, you can see it, and then the pedestrians can cross safely. So while I understand your comment that it's far away and no one's going to walk down here to get into that, putting a crosswalk mid-block in the middle of a road like Whiting Farms is a liability both for the city and for whoever puts it in.
Well, just so you're aware, there's already a mid-block crosswalk there. I mean, just from Farnham going across Whiting Farms.
Yeah, there may be. We didn't look at it because we were
well, there is.
go through this.
Right, well, there's definitely one there.
Yep.
I mean, I use it all the time myself, so I know it's there. So,
yep.
Okay, Councilor McGivern.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Mr. Furman. Just clarify, you're representing the developer for the entire project?
I am. John Redmond, who actually signed the application, had a conflict tonight. Otherwise, he would have been here himself.
No, that's okay. I just meant, you know, the work you're doing is for the developer.
It is for the developer, Shields Hotel Management.
The development is completed. Who will own, will there be any standalone property owners within this complex?
No, all the development is going to be set up as a leased area. I would say the only one that might be contrary to that would be the vitamin store and the retail building. that is being self-constructed by Shield Hotel Management as retail spaces that would get rent out. So you would have tenants in that, but the building itself would be tied to the property, as would the existing hotel that is currently
So
owned
McDonald's will be owned,
by McDonald's. Well, no, the land would be, there's no subdivision of land. So all the land that everything is on is owned by Shields Hotel. McDonald's would own their building and all the real property inside of it, as would all the other tenants.
on-site McDonald's pertaining to the drive-through permit. How many cars can queue up for the drive-through?
Yeah.
Within their parcel, within, you know?
So the way that McDonald's operates their facilities is you have the pickup window, which is located on the east side of the building, and then you have the ability to stack 6 cars from the pickup window to the order board in either side of these. So within the order facility, you have the addition of 1 car here and 2 going around this outside line. So if you use this outside line, that's currently 8 to the backside of the order board. The McDonald's standards actually has a drive-through lane extend across the backs of these of the parking spaces. So that gives you the ability to have another 5 spaces. So there's a total of 13 cars available for stacking from maximum full to pickup window exit.
In that area you noted where they would be driving through the parking spaces themselves, is that one way going east?
It is one way.
Okay. So anyone using...
I'm sorry, it's actually one way going south.
Okay, I didn't think it was east, but you said east first. Any cars coming in from Lower Westfield Road, that first entrance, they would actually have to go around the building to get in line?
So if someone is coming in from Lower Westfield Road, they would drive up the perimeter road to this first intersection.
If they used the gas station entrance.
Lower Westfield Road, yes.
Yeah.
So what they would do is they would come in the site, they would actually drive past the site. This is the only entrance in here.
You show an entrance though prior to that.
Right, so what had happened, there is one here, but that McDonald's has elected on their traffic flow to make that exit only.
Okay.
So this is the only entrance into McDonald's, so they would actually come in.
That's the best answer I've heard so far.
Yep.
No, that's the answer I was looking for. That makes a lot more sense. On that, Hoyokers call the secret entrance into this lot through the gas station. I never knew there was an easement for that, Mr. Planning Director. And you're not the Economic Development Director tonight, you're the Planning Director. You drive into Danny Tierney's place and you take a left. That's an outgoing queue for Dunkin' Donuts.
No, the Dunkin' Donuts, well, that's the exit from the property. The McDonald's
Exit from
queue
the property, which is also a direct shot from the Dunkin' Donuts drive-through.
That's right. So a little history about this property in general, which you probably will all find interesting, is that prior to Shields Hotel buying this, the former owner of this created a deal with O'Connell. And you're all familiar with the Shell sign that's located on I-91. Holyoke ordinance requires that if you have a sign, it has to be connected to your property. So they basically sold the gas station a 30-foot wide strip of land completely along Lower Westfield Road. And they connected it up to 91 where the sign is located. So this former owner sold the frontage that we had on Lower Westfield Road to the gas station. So this property does not front on Lower Westfield Road. So to compensate for that, they issued them a perpetual easement to access and use a driveway through the site. It's protected by easement. It will never go away. Kind of a crummy deal.
I'm not sure if I think it's there, but can you explain the emergency?
The emergency exit?
Emergency exit.
All right. So that's another issue that the fire department had asked for as part of the planning board process. And again, it's a complicated issue, not easily resolved. So the planning board the fire department was concerned with this being the primary entrance off of Whiting Farms Road. And though they have access through the gas station for emergency purposes, that S-turn to get around was a little troubling to them. So they asked that we permit a emergency connection directly out onto Lower Westfield Road. And there's two issues with that. The first is that Mass Highway owns this property right to the edge of the gas station entrance. And this piece of property is tied to I-91 and is classified under Mass DOT as a no-access right-of-way, which means curb cuts and driveways are not allowed in this. So in order to get a curb cut or a driveway within a no-access area, you have to petition the state through the Mass DOT permitting process. So that's complication one. Have made on other projects in my career 6 applications for what is called the break-in access to Mass DOT. I've been successful on 1. In 30 years, I've only had 1 approved, so they're not given away very easily. The second complication is that we don't own the land that we're asking for the break-in access for. It's owned by the gas station. So the decision tree goes is that the planning board asks us to pursue getting this break-in access. So we now have an application prepared. We've sent it to the abutter. He refuses to sign it. Until that is signed, it doesn't get submitted to Mass DOT. If it is submitted to Mass DOT and he eventually signs it, we then have to go through the right-of-way break-in access process, which involves the DOT engineers in Boston. So from the words of the District 2, the chances of getting that break-in access are slim to none, particularly when we have asking for it on a property we don't own. So the planning board decision says that we will actively pursue it. We have gone as far as we can.
If, by chance, it was granted by DOT, by the state, when you say emergency access, does that mean only emergency vehicles?
It is.
Or anyone could use it?
We've actually completed a design for it. So what we would do is the curbs in that, on either side of that area are sloped granite edging. So they're not vertical, they're laid down. And the change in elevation on sloped granite edging is about 4 inches versus vertical, which is 6 to 8. So with the sloped granite edging, our design included infilling of the area between those 2 granite curbs with a paver material. So it didn't look like a driveway. We would then break the fence and put a sliding gate across that. That would have a Knox box on it, so if the fire department ever had to get access to that, they would have to get out of the truck, unlock it, slide it, and they would drive through. So we have a design. We submitted it as part of our application. The DOT actually looked at it and said, yep, this is great. When you get the application signed, submit it, and that's where we stay.
The development itself, on site, who did the flow of traffic work? Who did the,
VHB did.
okay. They worked with the state on Whiting Farms Road and Lower Westfield Road mitigation?
We worked with the state on the
Off-site
Lower
now,
Westfield, on the Lower Westfield Road mitigation. The Whiting Farms Road belongs to Holyoke, so we worked with the DPW on those. The state really has no say on a signal that's owned by the city.
Okay. There's no doubt, it's a wonderful project. You know, I'm trying to make it work from all angles. McDonald's, any of the restaurants, I'm sure the retail stores want to attract people off of Interstate 91. Probably the hotels too, but I don't think that's causes a major traffic impact. But the restaurants, McDonald's could. I'm sure I don't have to tell you what this area is like over the next month on a historical basis.
Yes.
And there's no doubt the state has done a lot of work on Lower Westfield Road from the opposite intersection of Homestead, the on and off of the interstate, the in and out of the mall, the in and out of Hoyle Crossings, CVS, and all the other smaller commercial areas. But this is scaring the heck out of me for Whiting Farms Road, which took us years to try to make sense. And David mentioned pedestrian, which I think has always been an issue there. But not even just in the month of November and December. We have have had historical backups on Whiting Farms Road that go back to Route 5. Are you familiar with?
I live in the area, yes.
Okay. And, you know, we have a backup on Route 5 during the commuter rush hour, which we have to deal with. But that backup compounded with the holiday season, you know, we've seen traffic on Whiting Farms Road be backed up for hours. It's not good for anybody, and, you know, whether they're trying to reach their destination, a commercial or shopping, or whether they're trying to get home, it's not good for anyone. This traffic signal would be controlled by the city, and we worked very hard. We put a right-hand turn only lane from back towards JP's restaurant all the ways up to keep traffic flowing on Whiting Farms Road, knowing that a lot of people going up aren't going to the mall, aren't going to, at the time, the Holiday Inn, aren't going to CVS, but are trying to get to the highway, trying to get, you know, to a destination beyond. And it worked for years. If we're gonna be stopping people twice now, has anybody done the numbers for Whiting Farms Road?
We have. We have a full traffic study that was reviewed and approved by both DPW and Mass DOT.
Mr. Planning Director? I don't buy it. I lived here too long.
If the question is, have the numbers been done? Yes, they have, and it's been approved.
I don't buy that this is not gonna back up traffic on Whiting Farms Road.
I don't have the numbers with me. I didn't come prepared to discuss this site plan, but
Well,
it
I
was
think
reviewed
traffic
and-
mitigation, when it comes to adding a reason for people to drive into a commercial development, includes traffic mitigation on the public way.
Sure. So let me elaborate and maybe kind of make things maybe more clear than I might have made them. So the site, all the uses that you see on the master plan were reviewed and approved by the planning board. And as part of that process, we went through MEPA, Massachusetts Environmental Policy Act, which brought in all the state agencies, particularly the state DOT from both Boston and here. There's no question that the traffic is going to back up. It's going to back up whether we go there or not. The mitigation that the state has asked for is that we develop a coordination plan. The reason that you get backups right now is that all the signals are intended to work as a unit. So when they go green, they all go green, so you have a slug of traffic going through. Then it stops and allows other traffic to go otherwhere. What's happening now is the coordination programs are out of sync and some of the equipment out there is broken. When a loop gets broken, it loses its ability to think on its own, and the signal defaults to what is called recall. So it goes back to a time clock. It's going to stay green for 4 minutes, whether there's somebody sitting there or not, and that's what causes backup. So part of the mitigation package that this developer was tasked with was reviewing all these signals, fixing all the broken equipment, and to create a brand new a brand new coordination package for all 5 signals. That is underway. The improvements between the signal, the improvements we're making here are over $500,000. So to look at this, not having looked at the rest of the process we went to, you're just not seeing all the effort that was put into trying to make this work. The other thing I will add is that this project is approved. Something's going to be here. So when you look at the traffic signal numbers and how the traffic signal is generated, a fast food restaurant with a drive-through, particularly one of this nature, will generate about 1,200 cars a day for the development. This development itself was projected to have close to 2,900 vehicles per day. If you take the drive-through off of this building, something is still going to be here. and it's most likely still going to be a fast food restaurant. But without the drive-through, a drive-through only equates to about 30% of the volume of cars going to this. So out of 1,000 vehicles per day, round numbers, you're talking, 300. The drive-through adds very little to the entire program. So while I think you're focusing on the traffic backup and identifying that backup with this drive-through, the drive-through is a very small piece of the overall project, which is already going in.
I don't disagree with that. And quite frankly, I don't have a problem with the drive-through. You answered the two questions I had about it. I understand that. You started your opening comments where a drive-through cannot, I forget the exact wording, but interfere with the public way.
That's right.
The municipal public way. This traffic light at your main entrance here has not been approved yet by the city. Okay, it may have been approved and designed by the planning board, but requires an ordinance by this body in order for it to be a traffic stop. Okay, and that hasn't come before us yet. And I'm just pointing out, and maybe I'm taking too much liberty here tonight, because what we really are talking about is the drive-through, is that there's a major flaw here in terms of traffic mitigation on Whiting Farms Road. The developer, and what you're doing is perfect. You're getting people in and out of that development as quick as possible, as efficiently as possible. The traffic light isn't for Whiting Farms Road. It's for Lower Westfield Road and what's coming off the highway, what's coming out of the mall, which is fine. We want that. That's how this place is gonna work. But we need to do something now for Whiting Farms Road, or we're gonna have a nightmare that's worse than we ever experienced.
And just to address that, I believe we are. The traffic signal, out of $500,000, a traffic signal is only about $125,000. Everything else is dedicated to the intersections that exist out there today. We've committed to rebuilding the equipment within the intersection of Whiting Farms Road and Lower Westfield Road. That's a $65,000 to $70,000 commitment. And that's in addition to what we've committed to replacing stuff that has just not been maintained. We're looking at the two intersections over at either side of the ramp. We're reviewing those. Any equipment that's there, the loops, we know for a fact that 3 of the loops are broken and they're not functioning, which means the signal goes on recall. We've committed to fixing those, and those are $1,500 a piece to fix. And we're also looking at the Hoyle Crossing intersection. We've been tasked with doing a view of that. So while I agree with your statement that this was put in for the benefit of getting cars and traffic here, we are looking at this thing holistically. We're not just focused at our front door. We have gone through, we don't even have frontage or access, legal frontage on Lower Westfield Road, but yet this developer is looking at 4 signals.
Well, it's a big project, and all 4 signals, but more so Whiting Farms Road is going to be impacted. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Your
Councilor
work is well
Alexander?
done.
Thank you,
I just disagree at Whiting Farms Road.
Thank you, Councilor McGivern. Councilor Alexander?
Thanks. I'm going to poke at the traffic thing again for a second too, but maybe with slightly softer balls. So somebody at some point, I think you said in January, did a traffic study of the area under present conditions. So we know roughly how many cars there are.
Yes.
With some seasonal adjustments, I'm sure, factored into that. And you know what the queue times are and what this all goes into. I'm just sort of reiterating what a traffic study does.
Right.
You know how many cars queue up at a typical intersection at a given time of day, blah, blah, blah. All that stuff is baselined out, right?
Correct.
Now you're adding a bunch of different projects in here, each of which is going to add some carload to the total circulation in the area.
Yes.
And you're also making changes to the way in which the signals interact with the traffic.
Yes.
Does your post fully developed everything's in data show that the traffic is going to flow better on Whiting Farms, the queue times are going to be lower, or the queue times are going to be higher than the present conditions?
We rate traffic signal performance in
ABCD.
level of service, not so much by queue lengths.
Okay, so that's fine.
You're right. So the level of service for these intersections And we evaluate it on a traffic signal, we evaluate it for 3 conditions. We evaluate the level of service for all the signals within the study area based on current conditions. We evaluate those signals on current conditions projected out 7 years as required by Mass DOT.
So
And-
normal increase in traffic
Right,
due
normally,
to economic growth, whatever.
which is generally 2% per year.
Okay.
And then what we do is we evaluate it for current conditions plus the additional traffic. So, and the intent of that is to see what this development will do and have impact on the performance of signals 7 years down the road if nothing happens. And that's the 2 analysis and criteria. So each intersection has a level of service, and I believe Whiting Farms Road, which is the one that was majorly impacted by our development, came in with a level of service C.
Present conditions.
Present condition. And traffic signals are rated A through E, A being the best, E being basically failed. I'm sorry, A through F. E was a spin-off of school.
Right.
F's are bad. So, when we evaluated this, the level of service dropped down to a D, from a C to a D here. So we've already...
By adding the traffic load from the development project?
Right.
Without changing the signalization at all?
That's right.
Okay.
So we did 2 things. The first thing is that one of the mitigation efforts has already been implemented. There was a high crash rate coming down Lower Westfield Road and taking the left onto Whiting Farms Road. There's a red arrow there. So we actually installed a flashing yellow. It's the second one in the state. It's already been installed, and what that does is a light will, instead of just going green to yellow to red, what it will do is it will go green to flashing yellow. And what that does is a flashing yellow lets the drivers know that that movement is still protected, but it's just like having yellow on a stoplight. They can continue to go, but they ought to be looked at the cars coming forward. That has been proven to reduce the levels of impacts here. So the other mitigation that we had in order to increase the level of service was to tie this signal with this signal. So right now, if we put this in as a standalone signal, this one could go green, this one could be red, and then this section of Lower Whiting Farms Road would be backed up. So by tying these 2 signals together, they operate as a slug, as if the signal was still not there. I will comment that, we do have that backing up problem here, but the green or the right turn lane that is out there is going to exist after this signal goes in. So, but what it will do is it will just be slugs through here. So this will go through, this right turn lane will clear. When the light turns green, it will be allowed to go through again. So the level of service and the mitigation that we have planned have returned the level of service to what it is currently, based on these improvements that we've.
So we haven't gained anything, but we haven't lost anything, and maybe we've stopped a few wipeouts from people taking that left.
Yes.
Okay, last question. When you evaluate any sub-piece of this, and then I assume you sum them all together, so you say a McDonald's is going to have 1,200 cars a day, and a hotel is going to have 200 cars a day, and whatever, and you sum those all up.
Yep.
Do you assume those are 1,200 new additional cars? I mean, realistically, some of those cars are there anyway because they just came from the mall or something.
That's a great question, and it gets into the composition of traffic studies as well. So there's two functions of a traffic study. So the first function of a traffic study is to determine whether there is a threshold on the project that allows it or requires it to go through MEPA. So on a MEPA filing, you cannot adjust the traffic. And what you had just identified as pass-by trips being on the roadway, that's a reduction that a developer is allowed to take on the amount of trips going into the site.
And sort of net new traffic.
Right, but MEPA doesn't allow that. So the number that I threw up before, just shy of 2,900 trips, that is net unadjusted counts. So that isn't taking into account the 25% pass-by that is already on the road, or it isn't taking into account the existing trips that may or may not have been generated by this site. And there was a banquet facility, there was a Friendly's here. That 2,900 trips is basically to say, are we in MEPA or are we not in MEPA? And the 2,900 was enough to require us to go through MIPA, and we went through that process. Now, what you had just asked about was the reduction. So what the reduction is used for is determining what the actual trips will be projected on this roadway. So while MIPA sees 2,900 and you're required to go through that process, the roadway may actually be upwards of 25 to 35% less. 25% being the allowable reduction that is allowed by pass-by trips. Someone coming in through here and saying, oh, there's McDonald's, I'm gonna swing in, grab a dinner, and then swing back out again. That's not a new trip. And to take credit for the trips that are being generated by the hotel that are now gone.
So when you said the performance of the main intersection there is gonna come back to sea level?
Yes.
Is that based on the adjusted number or on the gross number?
That is on the gross number.
So we could actually get an improvement in
Yes.
performance?
Again, MIPA
Because
does.
there's 30-ish% less traffic than those numbers would actually.
Yes,
indicate.
so,
Okay.
so MIPA, again, because they don't allow you to do the adjustment, they want to see worse condition.
Sure.
Mass DOT is part of the MIPA process, so they don't want to see the little tricks that developers can do to say, oh, I'm going to take 45% pass by because this is a gas station or whatever.
But so, just to be clear, this is again, just for my own head here. What we then are seeing is, in the worst-case scenario, the traffic will be no worse than it is now,
Yes,
roughly.
roughly,
And there's some reasonable expectation that the performance will be somewhat improved over that.
yes.
Thank you.
Okay, well, we had a great discussion about traffic, and I can't wait till that order comes before ordinance committee again. That's gonna be tremendous, because I'll get to hear it all over again in high def, which is gonna be, or high fidelity, I should say. So,
Invite the public to participate.
oh, for positively. So we are still in public hearing mode. Mr. Furman, thank you. I think you've pretty much gone round the bend and come back again. So there were no other comments from our other materials. Well, I read those into the record. I don't think there are any other comments from city departments or staff. Mr. Marrero already addressed us. Now it's time to hear from the public, either in favor or in opposition. Are there any members of the public who would like to address the body in favor of this application? Or in opposition? Yeah, either way. Okay, if you would just kind of just pull that mic down, and if you state your full name and address, please.
My name is Richard Mayer, M-A-Y-E-R, and my address is Iduna Lane, Amherst, Massachusetts. I'm not a resident of Holyoke.
Do you have a business interest in the project or
I
something?
have a business interest in the project. I work with the developer, Shields Hotel Management.
Thank you.
And again, I wasn't going to speak, but I am in favor of the project, obviously, I think. And I know Mr. Furman has done an unbelievably outstanding and thorough job in analyzing the project and going through all the steps with both the city, all the city departments, and the state departments. And I have no doubt about what he says is very, very accurate. I've worked with him before on other projects and his company, and they're very, very good. They're one of the best in the state. In any case, I think it's a really great project, and the traffic issues were high on the list of potential problems that we reviewed, and we think we've done a really outstanding job in addressing them and mitigating the impacts. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, thank you very much. Is there anyone else here who would like to speak either in favor or opposed? Okay.
Motion to close the public hearing?
Second.
Motion to recommend approval of, sorry.
Oh, yeah, on the motion to close the public hearing, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, okay.
Motion to recommend
so moved.
approval of the special permit for the drive-through.
We have a second on that?
Second.
Okay, so the motion before us is to approve the special permit for the drive-through under discussion. I think we've gone through this round and round, but if there are any additional comments, we'll hear from the committee. Hearing none on the motion, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That passes 4-0. So, Mr. Furman, take a deep breath, and then what'll happen is this committee recommends to the full city council, which will meet on Tuesday, the 15th, and we'll see how it rolls from there.
Very good. Thank you all for your interest in traffic studies. It's refreshing to have people actually, kind of try to help figure out how things work. So I appreciate your time and your commitment to the city. Thank you.
Thanks for coming in.
Okay, thank you.
Motion to
Vanessa
take up-
Hagan taught us well, Mr. Furman.
Motion to take up item number 7. Councilor Bartley's order on a regional bike share program.
What is this now? Item number 7. Okay. Item number 7, city, oh, that's wait a minute, that's not that. Where is it? Where's my order? Okay. Okay, that in accordance with Chapter 40, Section 4A, City Council approve an intermunicipal agreement between the Town of Amherst, City of Holyoke, City of Northampton, PVPC, City of Springfield, and the University of Massachusetts in Amherst, my alma mater, for a regional bike share program. And so this is an MOU for a Pioneer Valley Bike Share Program. We have before us the intrepid Mr. Marrero, and we have before us Mr. Andrew Smith of Conservation. Gentlemen, fire away.
Thank you. So essentially what you have before you is an intermunicipal agreement which requires city council approval. Beyond that, the normal contracting procedure which falls on the mayor. The Pioneer Valley Planning Commission has been working with 4 communities and the University of Massachusetts to have a bike share system. This is something like what you would see in New York City, City Bike. I can't remember the one that was in Montreal. Boston, I believe, has one. Several larger cities have one. The cities in Western Massachusetts don't have enough scale to individually have a bike share program. But we embarked on a planning process and a feasibility process to see if we could have a bike share program, all of us together. We jointly commissioned a feasibility study that has some ideas of locations and potential costs depending on how it's structured. So, it could be a structure where, for example, it's a high lease, low capital payment, or a high capital, low lease payment. And so where we're at now is we're going to jointly seek CMAQ funding, state funding for, it stands for quality, so the air quality.
Mitigation and air quality.
Congestion mitigation and air quality funding to pay for the capital expenses in the project. However, to do that and also to procure a vendor to see what are the actual costs, not just estimates from a feasibility, we need to have a memorandum of understanding that every municipality involved will agree to in order to be able to access the funds, which would go through most likely the Pioneer Valley Planning Commission. This doesn't commit us to anything right now, other than going forward with getting the funding and procuring a bicycle vendor. Ultimately, it's not up to that point that we will have a full understanding of what the cost scenario is to the city. So we have an out until we understand what the cost scenario is. We wouldn't set up any blank check. This just allows us to continue more enhanced planning, if you will. It's the first part of implementing, really understanding what the temperature of the water is before going into the pool.
Mr. Smith, you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think that's the main point, is that it's an option to go forward. Having every single town and a university on board allows for that application for CMAQ funding, which would cover all the capital costs. So I think without having that partnership in place, PVPC can't file the application, and they can't start to look for potential private sponsors to help cover some of the long-term costs. So as Marcus, as Mr. Marrero stated, there is the option to back out if all of a sudden all the RFPs come back, and it's just the costs are a different temperature in the pool, then obviously there's always an out in this scenario. So I think that's the important thing, is that you can always back out.
And where, including UMass, the other municipalities, where are they with this process?
Northampton has approved theirs.
course.
Amherst is about to approve it. I think it's in the docket for Springfield for the next month. We all need to have it approved by January, because we need to submit the CMAQ funding.
And UMass?
I'm not sure. They're the easiest one to approve because they only have to go through the chancellor. So we're not worried about that.
Okay, by January. All right. So to sum up, this sounds like it's a healthy way to promote bike share. It doesn't really cost anything. We're gonna seek grant funds, and PVPC is going to take the lead on this. If there's anything that obligates the city, we'll know beforehand.
Correct. Yes, because upon implementation, there may be a cost associated with it. Part of this is we will try to defer costs. One of the ways that bike share systems are paid for is through either advertisement or sponsorship. So City Bike in New York City isn't City with a Y, it's City, C-I-T-I, because Citibank sponsors it. We don't have a Citibank in Western Mass, not of that magnitude, but certainly.
We have Bay State Medical Center, they can step up.
Right, exactly.
It's healthy, right?
Right, and though that's one of the entities that may well, certainly will be approached, and that's been discussed through the committee that's been studying this. So those are ways of potentially subsidizing the system. We don't have a full understanding yet of if after all is said and done, there would be a cost with the municipality, but even at that point, it would come to, we would have to evaluate it at that point. Is it something that we deem worthwhile for the cost or not?
I mean, I think it's a great idea. BMC, then you've got Mass General affiliated with Cooley Dick.
Absolutely.
Correct?
Do it as part of a wellness marketing campaign thing.
So, Councilor LeBron Martinez, please.
Yeah, I just got a question. I seen all these communities.
Gladys, just a mic, please.
I'm sorry, I just seen all these communities, Marcos and Andrew listed here, and Chicopee's not in it. Why? Is that?
We're better than Chico. Oh no, I'm kidding.
No. I'm just saying, 'cause including
We love Chicopee.
Northampton,
Stop it.
Amherst, and I'm just wondering.
I honestly don't know why they've chosen not to participate. It was open for anyone to participate. For whatever reason, they weren't interested.
Oh, okay.
Maybe they'll be interested later.
Holyoke has some natural fits from a transportation standpoint, because the whole concept of the bike share is the last mile of the network. So having the train station here, I think that's a big attraction. Somebody could hop on the train, get off, rent a bike, and then ride around and do stuff. The whole concept is to make it easy for people to get around for that quote-unquote last mile of their trip.
Oh.
So I think that's a strong selling point regionally, to have Springfield with the train station, Holyoke with the train station, Northampton with the train station.
Yeah, that's a very good point. The first part of the feasibility study really looked at the downtowns of each one of the cities, and UMass is like a downtown to itself. So we are looking for substantial density. Whether Chicopee does have a downtown area, but maybe they felt it wasn't enough, or they had other priorities.
That's a good question. Councilor McGivern.
Marcus, I think you described in Andrew two different types of potential cost. One's the obvious, and I think People's Bike would sound pretty good myself. The best community bank in the area.
That was actually my suggestion.
I didn't mean to steal it from you. Doug might not be happy, but we're just another. No, I'm just kidding.
Very progressive, Councilor.
He'd be very happy. On the bigger cost, we're buying into this. I think it's great. I certainly support it. But when you say you can back out, are you saying subject to appropriation, or more? I think to word it different is, how does the city back out? Who determines that?
The way the negotiation that's in front of you right now is structured, prior to the vendor selection. So the RFPs go out, everybody decides whether or not it's going to be a public model, a nonprofit model, a quasi-public model, whether it's going to be an iPhone-generated system or a mounted system similar to what you see with City Bike. So all that stuff gets kind of put into the sausage maker, you get the final product back, and then somebody gets to look at the sticker and say, yeah, we can swing it, or whoa, that's way too much money, based upon what the overall consensus is for the 5 different partners. So I think signing out before you sign, backing out before you sign on, I think that's the way it was structured. Once all the costs are in front of you and you understand everything.
So the agreement is built at every community had the same concern. No one was going to give up their sovereignty and give over a blank check to sign on to something that they didn't know what it was going to cost. So we've all agreed that we all have an out. By the time that the procurement comes back, we all get to vote on it, whether it's acceptable or not. So we have a period of time where we can consider this and the appropriation for it. If it's not something that we desire, we can pull out without any penalties before a company is selected.
We includes if the city council majority decided it would be best to pull out.
Well, the city council does all appropriations by 2/3 majority, so I can't imagine how we would come up with a significant amount of money.
So it's subject to another appropriation coming back to us.
Unless there's some significant fund lying around that I don't know of. Yeah, I mean something.
No, I'm being the devil's advocate. We may get some questions next Tuesday, and I just want to be able to answer them.
Sure. And as I said, I mean, some of this is still to be defined, because if it can be covered by sponsorship, then it may not be a matter of, we get the benefit. We cover it from the grant. Ideally, we can cover the operations through a sponsorship, and it doesn't go to the city coffers. But
and what kind of cost are we talking about? Just rough.
Right. So depending on whether it is a dock-based system or if it's an owned system or lease system, we're talking about in terms of capital costs. It can be as low as $39,000. It can be as high as $624,000.
It's a range.
Right. It's because if you're owning it, you're spending the money on the capital. If not, then you're just the capital is you're paying for it over time with the operation. So obviously your operation costs are going to be higher.
I think what PVPC is planning on applying for is $1.2 million in CMAQ funding, with the potential for the first 3 years of operating costs to be covered. I think right now that's the plan that's in front of the partners working on the group. So some of the other places, when it comes down to like an ad revenue, I guess position, Hubway in Boston, they have New Balance, and New Balance kicks in $600,000 a year in order to have their name on the bikes. So there are models out there that do kind of demonstrate that revenue can be generated just from these naming rights. Do we know the answer to that question? Do we know who's going to bite? Do we know if all of a sudden we have bikes and people's bike is a possibility? Right now, we don't know. We don't know what the RFPs are going to give us back. So it could be a hot topic, or it could just be something that there's no interest in. But without having that option to get those funds secured for $1.2 million, including potentially 3 years of operating costs, then we'll never know.
Thank you.
Councilor Alexander.
Thanks. So I understand the New York system because I've been down there a ton of times and I've seen it in action. I'm trying to figure out how that works in a regionalized. So would you be able to pick up a bike in Amherst and, I mean, I can't see how anybody would do this practically, but ride it to Springfield? Or is it a buying consortium, but they'd be separate systems, or?
It would be the same system. The idea is that it's regionalized. Yep.
Between towns?
Yes, correct.
And that's in the operating costs. That's the quote-unquote balancing of the system.
Bringing the bikes back from the town that everybody rides to?
Yeah, if say, for example, there's a basketball game at Mass Mutual Center and everybody from UMass rides down there because they want to see, UMass play UNC or whatever. And there's 1,000 bikes down there, and it's the company's job to bring them all back.
Okay. And capital costs are basically the bikes and the racks and the communication system to unlock a bike or whatever is necessary?
Right.
And that's to prevent theft, I assume, at some level. They have to know where the bikes are.
Correct, right.
And Gladys asked why no Chicopee. I'm going to ask the same question, but why these 5 towns only? You know, East Hampton's not here, lots of towns aren't here. Are they able to join in later if they?
Nothing in the agreement precludes anyone else from joining.
Is
but-
it basically PVPC put this out to all of the towns that are members of the commission, or?
I think so. This has been going on for a while, so it's hard to remember when it all started, but I believe so. It was put out to all member communities.
Because we got 3 towns right on 91, and then Amherst over east.
Right.
And, you know, you
Well,
kind of
Amherst
have to
had-
go through Hadley to get from Amherst back
Right.
to Northampton or whatever.
Amherst has the colleges, so they have pretty good density to operate a program like this.
So, but nothing would stop you from driving through Hadley, for instance, to take your bike from Amherst to Northampton.
Correct.
You can go wherever you want. Okay. Just making sure. I don't know how these things.
Nothing stops you to going to New Jersey if you have a city bike either.
I suppose that's true. Well, you're not allowed to take them on the bridges. Okay, that's all my questions. I think it's great. I thank you guys for chasing this down.
Yeah, definitely missing the boat with omitting South Hadley, with Mount Holyoke College. So,
Well, Hadley proper too. You have to go right through.
Yeah, Hadley,
A to B.
yeah, Hadley,
There's nobody there, and who cares? They've got the dead mall, right?
so I think the dead is back alive, that's what they tell me anyhow. So, okay, so let's not belabor anymore. We've got before us this proposal.
So
what's your pleasure?
A motion to adopt?
Motion.
I'm not sure what the actual motion should be.
Yeah, I would suggest the motion should be to approve and adopt the order, which is to allow the MOU to be,
The motion to approve the MOU, is that,
sure,
that get you there? Okay.
it will. That's a motion?
Yep.
And there's a second somewhere? Okay, on the motion, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, okay.
And thank you,
So
guys.
moved. One more motion will do it.
Motion to adjourn.
We are, okay, on the motion to adjourn, all in favor? Aye, we are adjourned. 9:10, thank you.
Nicely done.